all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camila Tomini Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Akua, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Six o'clock on the dot. Hello, wherever you are. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of November.
This is Breakfast with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster, and here's what's leading the news this morning.
A weekend camping trip turned to tragedy in Wales as the bodies of 4 missing teenagers have been recovered from a car wreck. Our reporter Theo Chicumba is in Garrick for us.
I'll have the latest as the community here and the families come to terms following the confirmation from North Wales Police that 4 missing young men were found in this area in Garrick.
A breakthrough in the Middle East. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 4-day truce to swap Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners.
The biggest tax cuts in 50 years, that's expected today as the Chancellor delivers his autumn budget statement. The Conservatives pledging to get the economy back on track. We'll have the latest throughout the morning.
And another night in the jungle for Nigel Farage. Luckily for him, it was just rice and beans on the menu. We'll have all the details on what happened for him in the jungle a little bit later on with Ben Leo.
Do you think he gets up every morning and takes 2 cans of beans and does that exercise that we saw
I'm
there?
sure he does, and I reckon a lot of the guys in there do a little workout as well.
Before they start the day?
Yeah.
Like in real life, not in
Yes.
jungle life?
Yeah.
What do you do to start the day?
Yawn, weep, and then have a shower and a cup of coffee. That's pretty much it every day.
My dog licks my knees and feet.
Oh,
as
that's
I
nice.
As I lie in bed, yeah.
That's
and then
nice.
And then I go, I'm thinking, oh.
Sure it's the dog?
Yeah, I thought maybe things are on the up here, but no, it was only the dog. It was only the dog. So there we go. The weather picture, we're going to be predicting what's ahead for the rest of the week. Let's have a look.
Good morning. Well, there'll be some more autumnal sunshine out there today, but by the end of the week, we'll see signs of winter. Now, find out more with me later on.
And as always, we love to hear from you throughout the course of the programme. Send in your thoughts to gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GBNews.
This sad news this morning, so sad news over so many of the newspapers today, and there's a headline in The Sun which says it all: so young. 4 teenagers who disappeared on a weekend camping trip to Snowdonia have been found dead after their car was discovered submerged in a river.
Well, a major search was launched after Jevon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Henderson and Hugo Morris failed to return from a camping trip.
Police confirmed that car left the road in Garreg near Tremadog, which is where the bodies were recovered. The police said it appears to have been a tragic accident. The 4 boys, all students at Shrewsbury College, were doing their A-levels.
Well, joining us now is GB News reporter Thea Jacumba, who's in Gwynedd for us this morning. Good morning to you. The families very distressed yesterday, wanting information and the worst news possible when they found all 4 boys.
Yes, well, a very good morning to you both. As you say, a difficult time for the families. They would have been hoping for some positive news, but late in the afternoon, police did confirm that 4 bodies were found in an overturned car, which was partially in the water just up the hill. On my right there was heavy police presence since Monday, and following the report by a member of the public yesterday morning, the police were able to find the car and confirm that 4 bodies were found in what appears to have been a tragic accident, according to North Wales Police. These young men, Jevon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Henderson and Hugo Morris, all aged between the age of 16 and 18, and some of them had just recently started their A-levels. Now, of course, this is the age where parents will be allowing their children to have a bit more freedom as they go into adulthood, but just a few weeks away from Christmas. It's not the news that the families would have wanted to hear. Now, we heard from Harvey Owen's mother, one of those 4 young men, who was saying her son's phone was last seen used on Sunday afternoon. And officers said they appeared to have died in the car that they were travelling in, and it seems to have left the road in this area, just as I say, over my right shoulder. And police have also said I would ask the families of these boys are afforded privacy at this desperate time.
Theo, thank you very much indeed. International developments now. Major development in the Middle East overnight. Israel and Hamas agreeing to a 4-day truce in Gaza.
Yes, the deal will see Hamas release 50 women and child hostages in exchange for 150 Palestinian women and those under 19 being held in Israeli jails.
In a late-night cabinet meeting, the Israeli Prime Minister said the return of hostages was a sacred and top goal, while reiterating Israel will continue to seek total victory.
Well, the deal was mediated by Qatar and Egypt, and it will also allow for hundreds of humanitarian, medical and fuel aid trucks to enter all parts of the Gaza Strip.
It could be good news as expectations are raised around tax cuts in today's autumn statement. Millions of workers could be in line for a reduction in their national insurance contributions as the government is hard-pressed to offer a sweetener to voters ahead of the next election.
Well, meanwhile, it was announced last night that the national living wage will increase by almost 10%. More than 2 million full-time workers are set to benefit from a pay rise of more than £1,800 a year from next April. OK, so what do we think should be in that budget today? We're going to have the opinion of an economics commentator very, very shortly. But the thing was, suddenly, you know, from today is only Wednesday, and on Sunday the Chancellor saying he can't announce anything, he can't say anything, and ever since everybody's been singing like birdies or budgies or whatever it happens to be, the latest thing, the living wage, to be increased. So lots and lots of leaks and things that are predicting what is in that budget. And we're talking about the biggest tax cuts for businesses in 50 years. Why are we so grateful for that when it was this government that put all those taxes up? So suddenly everybody's thinking, hallelujah, they're so good, giving us our own money back again.
But that's the way it is. Anyway, we will be discussing that throughout the programme today. We're very interested in your views. GBnews at gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet at GBnews as to what you would like to see coming back your way, your money in that budget.
Well, perhaps we have a case study now who we could talk to. What will the autumn statement mean for you? Let's speak to single mum, but also marketing consultant Rachel Gristock about what she's looking for from the Chancellor today. Good morning, Rachel. Thank you for joining us. Is there anything in particular that you've heard over the last few days, as Eamonn saying so much has been leaked out in dribs and drabs, that has really caught your attention, or is there anything that you're really still hoping to hear from the Chancellor a little bit later on?
Well, I've had to work part-time for a few years now because I got long COVID, which has left me on local housing allowance and quite dependent on it. And there hasn't actually been a raise in local housing allowance since 2020, and that raise was based on 2019 rents. And I'm getting a rent increase in a few weeks, so my local housing allowance is £750 a month. And my new rent will be £1,350. So I'd really like them to bring the local housing allowance back into alignment with what's in the market now.
And specifically, what sort of measures then would you want to see? More house building being announced, or relaxation of rules around building? Is there any particular policy, or just something that makes housing more affordable, I guess?
I think they're doing good things at the moment with the Renters Reform Bill. So they'll be changing a lot of tenant rights next year. House building would be great, but that's not going to make an immediate difference to the 38% of renters out there at the moment who are using local housing allowance to make ends meet.
Just thinking, you look at any of our lives, and particularly your situation there, where you're a working single parent as well, and I'm sure you're really feeling the pinch. But when you go out and you go socially, you go to the cinema, you go and have a bite to eat out, just the whole cost of living thing is absolutely ridiculous. Do you think they've got their heads on as what it would take to just ease that strain on ordinary working families?
Well, I've got to be honest, Eamonn, I don't really go to the cinema or go out to eat anymore because I can't actually afford it. So no, I don't think they really understand what every man is going on, how things are for the usual average person at the moment.
I know.
This rent increase is going to mean I need to cut back on food and energy.
When you say you can't afford it, just give people an insight into your life. So you don't go to, say, a local pub on a Sunday to have a roast meal or something, or sort of things that would be deemed to be a little bit of a luxury. You just don't go there.
No, the last time I went out for a meal was in July to treat my daughter. We went to an all-you-can-eat sushi place for lunch. That was the last time I went out.
Yeah,
that was the summer holidays.
Tell me about your daughter. How old is she?
She'll be 13 in a few weeks.
Well, then you're in for a big shock. You're in for a big problem, aren't you? Because Santa at Christmas, there may be a few things on Santa's list which will prove difficult enough. Or have you been budgeting for that?
Yes, I have put a lot aside, and my children are mindful that money isn't plentiful. So they have a list of things that they want, and I tell them whether or not we can afford them.
Rachel, just finally, do you have a sense of optimism today that there could be something in there for you, or do you feel like you're just ready now for an election and, time for another team to have a go, if you like?
Right. So there has been a lot of there's been a lot of people emailing their MPs about it. There's a shelter campaign. I think it's called Stop Record Homelessness. So I know that people have been communicating with their MPs about it. So I'm hoping that it's going to be in the statement. But of course, we haven't heard any of those whispers that you were talking about earlier about it coming out. So I guess if it's not going to be in the statement, then what I'd like to say to the other parties is, can you make it a campaign promise in the upcoming election?
Well, that's an interesting one. Very, very good. And just as regards to Santa, just going back to him again, have you got a Santa's list? I mean, have you been a good girl? And do you think he'll be looking after you, or does Mummy miss out, bearing in mind cost of living?
I'm nearly 50 now, and I have everything that I need. But I have been a very good girl.
That's good. That's good. Oh, that's nice. That's nice to hear. May me be the first to wish you not only a happy budget day today, but a very happy Christmas to you and your family, Rachel. Thank you for talking to us this morning.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. First Merry Christmas I've had yet, so thank you very much. Let's speak to our economics expert now, Laurie Laird, who joins us in the studio. Do you think we're going to get some early Christmas presents from the Chancellor today?
Christmas, it gives
sorry,
anxiety. It really does. I have 4 kids. But what will the Chancellor give us? Look, this is such a leaky government. We almost know what's going to be in this thing, don't we? And the centerpiece, what I think Jeremy Hunt would like to be, the rabbit in the hat. And chancellors love rabbits in the hats, don't they? But the big thing, at least for us, will be this cut in national insurance contributions. This has been widely trailed. Got a lot of leaks about this overnight.
Well, if they can't pay for their health service, how do you get a cut in national insurance?
Eamonn, this is the big question, and we won't have a government or a prospective government being candid right now. After COVID, I think we all felt like we need more government. People want more out of the government than they did a decade ago. And the Conservatives can say, we want small government. It's not clear that's what people want. We want a better health service, but we don't. We are at a very high level of taxation right now. There needs to be an honest conversation about what we want out of government and what we're willing to pay. And no politician is going to do this right now.
Let's be honest. I mean, if this cut to national insurance that's supposed to affect, 28 million of us, if it actually does create growth, which is the buzzword of the season, isn't it? That brings in tax revenue. That helps pay for our services. The whole idea is that a healthy economy growth is what actually will stop us having this broken country that we're all so frustrated
Isabel,
with.
you've really hit it. Growth has been, particularly after the very brief Liz Truss premiership, growth is the word. And you really did a very good job there of explaining what it is, because we throw that word around, don't we? It's not entirely clear what we're talking about, but a lot of growth needs to come from business. As much as previous governments have said business doesn't matter, and in language that you can't use it in a family programming. Remember Boris Johnson. But most people are employed by a business somewhere along the line. And the problem that we have is businesses right now don't have the confidence in the UK to continue to invest. Some of that's Brexit, but not all of it. The biggest thing here is changing policy. Look, with the Conservative government over the past 3 years, we've had so many different economic policies. Even with this government, Jeremy Hunt a couple of months ago, we can't cut taxes, we can't afford it. All of a sudden over the weekend, it's like he was captured, saying, we've turned a corner. We can cut taxes now. This lack of stability is really scaring business off.
But what can business expect today, do you think?
One of the things that business has been looking at is this mechanism that was announced last year, which allows them to, I'm getting a little bit dull here, but this is pretty important, allows them to write off any kind of big investment off their tax bill. Now, that was meant to expire in 2026. It looks like Jeremy Hunt's going to extend that a bit. But what happens if a new government comes in?
What sort of investment are we talking about? Is this specifically
really dull
just
stuff?
Any kind of, it's not just tech or equipment?
It could be equipment, it could be software, anything that allows that business to grow, that can create growth, maybe hire people in jobs that suit their skill level. One of the problems we have in this economy is unemployment's pretty low. We have a lot of people on long-term unemployment, and the budget was going to try to address that. But matching job openings with skill levels is a problem, and educating people into jobs that exist is something that this government or a future government has to look at.
OK, hold that thought, Laurie. You're going to be with us throughout the programme this morning, looking into your crystal ball and whatever the government have leaked as to what is going to happen. For the moment, thank you very much indeed. Any questions for Laurie, let us know. gbviews@gbnews. Whatever it is.
GBViews.com.
GBnews.com. Should be up the screen all the time there.
All the time.
There it is. gbviews@gbnews.com. Right, the time 17 minutes past the hour. Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Just bringing you up to date with what's happening news-wise.
And a sad top story for us. A weekend camping trip turned to tragedy in Wales. 4 missing teenagers have been recovered now from a car wreck.
Breakthrough in the Middle East. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 4-day truce to swap Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners.
And the biggest tax cuts in 50 years, as we've just been discussing. That's what we're expecting from the Chancellor. Suddenly today, he's delivering his autumn statement as the Conservatives are pledging to get the economy back on track. We'll have all the latest analysis and updates on that throughout the morning here on GB News.
To poke our noses out the doors and find out what the weather is with Annie Shuttleworth.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It'll be a cloudier day for many of us. There'll be some rain in the north, but there'll still be some sunshine on offer across southern areas. So we've got off to a slightly cloudier, damper start across parts of Scotland, northern England as well. That rain will persist, particularly in the north, but it will dry up across the Pennines. We'll also see plenty of dry weather across the bulk of England and Wales. Some sunshine developing by this afternoon once again. So a similar feel to yesterday by later on this afternoon. Highs of around 12 degrees. It'll also be as high as around 14 degrees across eastern areas of Scotland, despite the rain and cloud here. Then through this evening, it stays fairly cloudy across the board. The rain will start to pep up, though, across the far north of Scotland as that front starts to finally make its progress southwards. So particularly across the Shetland Isles, it's going to turn quite blustery and wintry up there. Across the south, though, staying cloudy, a little bit murkier than last night, with only lows of around 11 degrees for some towns and cities down here. So a milder start tomorrow. And the rain will then shift throughout Thursday further south, with that cold air becoming more widespread as we head into Friday from the north. So we've got some wintry showers starting to fall across the hills of Scotland, and we could see some overnight frosts over the weekend in southern areas. But on Thursday, highs will be around average of 12 degrees.
Thank you, Annie. Still to come, we're going to cross to Australia. We've got Ben Leo there on another night in the jungle for Nigel Farage on I'm a Celebrity next.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camila Tomini Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified on playing strip poker with Israel.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
So they are. Just a little reminder of John Cleese Sunday nights at 9 o'clock here on GB News. But by the time it's 6:23, we're going to go through the sports news, and we do that in the company of the esteemed broadcaster Paul Coyte.
Thank you very much. It's very, very nice to be here.
Not at all, my friend. Right, OK, so Wales got a draw last night in the Euros.
Yes, not enough.
Not enough.
So the way we looked at it yesterday, what they needed to play Turkey, they needed to beat Turkey, whereas in another game, Croatia needed to, actually, it was Armenia, had to get a result against Croatia. Neither worked out for them. So, to cut a very long story short, after a very feisty game against Turkey, and Wales, who should have done better, they haven't done very well in this, basically means they're now going into playoffs. So, the playoff situation, they did that in the World Cup, and they came through in the World Cup. So now it means, now this is going to come out tomorrow, there'll be a draw tomorrow, they will play either Finland, Iceland or Ukraine, who they actually put out of the World Cup, or then, and if they get through that, a potential final against Poland or Estonia, and also the good thing is that they're at home for those first ones. So the most important
thing...
So
they're not out of it yet?
Oh, no, it's a very long way of saying that they're not out of it yet and they need to win those. And then the draw for the finals is on December the 2nd. Have you done a draw? Have you ever done it? Either of you have done it? No. Have you never done an FA draw?
No.
It's the most terrifying.
A lot of balls, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Literally. I've done it once. I was never asked to do it again because I messed around too much. But you have to go to the FA, and then there's the velvet bag, and they put all the balls in. You have to do all the thing. The thing is, you know, when they do the draws, and then they say, and that team, they've won the competition 3 times. I was getting all the wrong ones round, and then if you drop one of the balls, actually during a draw, it's a no draw. So even if just before one of the balls drops on the ground and they have a guy, you know, from the FA with the tie and everything, it's a no draw. So it's a very stressful thing.
Do you know, you should write a book about some of your experiences. I say this to Eamonn all the time. I know you've already done one, Eamonn, but, you know, your tour recently, but your stories just fascinate me.
But none of his stories are true.
Yeah,
he makes those up.
Yes, did I mention it was for the World Cup 1978 I did the draw.
I know.
I love it.
Let's just go to Australia, Paul, and we'll come straight back to you. We've got Ben Leo there for us this morning to see what sort of night Nigel had in the jungle. Ben, it's still dreary and cloudy, and what is it, tea time for you now? It's about 6 in the evening then, is it?
Yeah, it's getting to 6 o'clock, nearly the end of the day. Actually, the sun's just come out a bit, so look, I'll take whatever I can get at this point. At least I'm not a drowned rat like I have been the last couple of days. The show last night, Nigel not getting a lot of airtime, actually. He didn't do the trial last night because he wasn't voted to do it. And he's exempt from the trial tonight as well, over medical grounds. He had a bit of a dodgy back and a bad neck from a plane and car crash some years ago. This is the moment he emotionally told the campmates last night about the extent of his injuries.
Nice, I just saw you doing a bit of a workout over there.
Yeah, I have to.
Really? Why?
Because I've had a neck reconstruction and I've smashed everything more than once.
God.
So if I don't do it, I'll be in a terrible state.
How'd you smash it?
A car crash and a plane crash.
A plane crash?
Yes.
What were you doing at the time, Nigel, when you were flying a plane? Where were you going? Yeah, what?
I'm being an idiot. Flying a banner.
Oh, wow.
What was on the banner?
Was it a William
A Brexit message, obviously.
If you're a Nigel fan, then you'll be disappointed that he isn't going to get a lot of airtime. If you hate him, I guess you'll be over the moon. Nigel himself said to food critic Grace Dent, actually very discreetly, but the microphones picked it up, he said that he was disappointed that he wasn't picked for the trial last night because he reckons it's about 25% more airtime, and he wanted to touch base with a new audience. He reckons up to 10 million viewers who he hasn't connected with previously. Elsewhere, sorry to talk about Nigel's backside again, but Lorraine Kelly has been getting a bit of stick for comments she made on her programme yesterday on ITV. She's been accused of body-shaming Nigel, saying that she couldn't believe he was 59. He looks a lot older than he is, and that he gets the face he deserves. Some people calling it spiteful, others saying it was just a harmless joke. And finally, I don't know if you can see the Gold Coast skyline behind me, but I've been speaking to some locals in recent hours. They claim they've spotted three-time champion flat jockey Frankie Dettori walking around the streets, who is rumoured to be entering the jungle any day now. He's a very fiery, spicy Italian character who could very well kick up a bit of a stink in the camp if he does join. So all eyes on that, and yeah, another 2 and a bit weeks of all the fun and frolics to come.
A great personality is Francis. That would be excellent. That would be really, really good. Ben, really appreciate that. Thanks for bringing us all the atmosphere from inside the jungle camp. Thank you very much indeed. So, Lorraine Kelly not believing Nigel Farage's face. What did she say? He's older than he makes out.
Yeah, I didn't follow that.
No, anyway, but I tell you what, I don't believe that Fred Sirio is his hair is all that it should be. Nobody. I mean, he was bald 3 years ago. I mean, he was.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with having a hair transplant.
I didn't say there was, but except he's denying it.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's saying it's all natural.
He's looking great. He looks great, and Nigel's bottom also looks fine. So let's move on.
What were you looking at, Nigel's bottom?
I did just Google because I haven't seen any of the show.
That's quite pervy.
No, it's not. It's
no, it is. Say I Google somebody's bottom here. I could be arrested.
If people are talking about something, I need to understand it for my job. So I did just Google Nigel Farage bottom. And it looked fine. You know, looked fine. Looked fine.
And you've got to work with him in this office. I mean, how would he feel knowing that you are
the whole world has seen his bottom now? I'm the least of his concerns. Anyway.
But do you know why some people's bottoms are much younger looking than their faces?
Well, I think that's what Lorraine's talking about. Yeah.
Is that right? OK. Yeah. Right, there we go. Let's bring you up to date with what is happening news-wise with the time at 6:30. A weekend camping trip turned to tragedy in Wales as the bodies of 4 missing teenagers have now been recovered from a car wreck.
Good news, though, from the Middle East. Israel and Hamas have formally agreed to a 4-day truce to swap Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners.
Tax cuts are expected today as the Chancellor delivers his autumn budget statement. As the Conservatives pledge to get the economy back on track, we'll have the latest throughout the programme this morning.
And we're going to take a look now at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom. And overnight, the King and Queen hosted a state banquet for the President of South Korea and his wife.
During the King's speech, he praised South Koreans' culture and its ability to captivate imaginations, including a few unexpected references to popular Korean culture. It's the first incoming state visit since the King's coronation and the second of his reign.
The 4 men who killed health worker Ashley Dale in Liverpool will be sentenced later. She was shot with a machine gun near her home. On Monday, James Witham, Joseph Peers, Niall Barry and Sean Zeiss were all found guilty of murder in a 7-week trial at Liverpool Crown Court.
More drama at ChatGPT. Parent company OpenAI, as the recently ousted chief executive is set to return. His name is Sam Altman. He initially moved to Microsoft but will now return to OpenAI after an outcry from staff.
And the All England Lawn and Croquet Club, which hosts Wimbledon, will take its £200 million expansion fight to the Mayor of London after Wandsworth Council unanimously rejected its plans. They want to build 39 new tennis courts, including an 8,000-seater show court on the former site of Wimbledon Park Golf Club, and it would nearly triple the current size of the site from 42 acres to 115.
Just an interesting one that to bring up with Paul Coyte, who's with me now. You wonder, does Wandsworth Council actually know what it has here? It has got, one of the biggest, most important, most easily recognisable sporting events in the whole world, and they're saying, no, we don't want you to develop.
It's crazy. They're saying that they want to keep up with the Australian Open, excuse me, with the US Open, and they've got to expand. They've got to get bigger. They bought the golf club quite a few years ago, and they used it as a car park for a while, but the whole idea was there was going to be an expansion. And, I don't know, it'd be difficult, but if you kind of live in the area and you're living at Southfields and you're living that close to Wimbledon, you're going to expect that there's going to be people there, doesn't it?
Yes, but the houses that overlook the site, some of them are, tens of millions of pounds, and they don't want that green space concreted over or turned into green tennis courts, whatever it might be. They just don't. So they're obviously trying to balance that, the demands of the residents with the.
They got the common. They got the common. The common's huge.
This is true.
But also, as far as Wimbledon tennis is concerned, they do need to move on. And this is not going to be some huge eyesore either. So it really is important. And I wonder how it's going to go, because now that they need to go to the mayor, now they're going to move up because the council is saying no. It's similar to the situation of when it goes late and they go, we've got to win this.
They did it in reverse at Wembley, where they built the domestic homes after the stadium was built. And you've never seen anything like it. You walk out the football stadium and you're looking into an apartment like straight away. I have never seen so much crammed in.
Because you can't see the stadium now.
No, you can't.
If you think of the old days, you would drive.
It's disgusting.
The whole you would see it. You can't see it.
The whole thing. It used to be. it was always in the wrong part of town anyway. It's a nightmare to get to. But even worse now, and where you can park, how far away they've done away with parking. I don't know what you're supposed to do now.
See, being a Spurs fan, I don't get to go to Wembley very often, so I wouldn't have seen it as much as you have in recent times.
Explain to me this whole associated club signings and what went on. So there was 8 clubs opposed a ban on this one, but it did. I know you explain it to me, right? Yeah, go.
Okay, right. You ready? Here we go. Cut a very long story short again. You've got clubs, for example, like Newcastle, and they have associated clubs with them. Now, you've got Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia and various other clubs as well. You've got Nice who are associated to clubs. So there's lots of clubs that are now in groups. Now, what was said at the Premier League meeting is that they didn't think it was fair that in the January transfer window that these clubs would be able to take players from their associated clubs and then bring them in. Now, one of them that's being discussed is Ruben Neves. Now, Ruben Neves is a terrific player, but with Newcastle, with injuries, it would help them if they went to his club, which they own, and say, we'd like Ruben to come into us. Now, other clubs have said, well, you know what, this isn't fair. But the majority of them are associated.
But a narrow majority won this one. No, I agree. I think it's awful that you get one owner and they own 5 or 6 clubs or whatever.
But you've got 10 or 11 clubs in the Premier League that are associated, so when it comes to a vote, they're always going to win because then it suits them. They can look at it 2 ways. What suits football, what suits the club, they're always going to vote and say, well, this suits us better.
If we haven't already, we are losing our game and it's going to go to some awful American-type format and ghastly. What have you got to tell me about financial fair play and Everton?
Quick one about Everton now. The same independent commission that ruled that Everton are going to be docked 10 points will now rule on whether clubs are compensated. Now, this is interesting because there's 5 clubs that are saying we want compensation for the fact that Everton, had they lost that 10 points last season, we would have been better. That's Burnley, Leicester, Leeds, Southampton and Nottingham Forest, which is interesting because not all of them would have been relegated anyway. You've got Southampton or Forest. It made no difference to their position whatsoever should Everton been relegated, but they want compensation anyway. Leeds last year, they still would have been relegated, but they're saying that they've lost £2.2 million of income because they would have been one place higher. They would have been relegated, but they would have been one place higher. But then you've got Leicester and also and Burnley, who say that had the 10 points been given to Everton, they wouldn't have been relegated when they were. So, I mean, everybody's just jumping in and saying, we want money, we want this, we want that. So we'll see what happens. And also that regulation, they've got to look at it with Manchester City and Chelsea in the future. So who knows how many points deducted should they be found guilty, what will happen with them.
Strip them off their titles and their trophies.
I say put them in League Two.
That's it. Put them in chains.
That will show them.
That will show them. Thank you very much indeed, Paul Coit. Paul back after 7 o'clock this morning. We'll take a break and still to come.
Oh, yeah, we're going to be talking about the Princess of Wales, who stunned twice yesterday. Absolutely smashed it from a fashion point of view. Anyway, this was during the South Korean president's state visit to Britain yesterday. All the details in just a moment.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Akua, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Stories to get you talking. Today we've got Andy Jones and we've got Anna Mikalova. Today, very nice to see both of you. And Anna, we're going to start with the Israeli situation and what is happening, a deal close on hostages.
Yes, so overnight the news has come in that there appears to be a deal that's been reached between Israel and Hamas on releasing some of the hostages currently held by Hamas. Now, the detail is that it's about 50 women and children, and it would be in exchange for about I think 150 Hamas prisoners, but also women and children prisoners. So that is the current deal. And obviously, you know, this gives some hope, but I would caveat all of this and to everyone getting, you know, optimistic today with just how difficult this negotiation is, because as soon as these hostages were taken, I remember reading that, you know, the last time Israel had to negotiate with Hamas over hostages, they ended up releasing so many terrorists because, you know, this is, I mean, and this is a classic. For 50, you're getting 150. Obviously, this time they specified women and children, but I think any future negotiations will involve more than women and children. And I think that is the fear. That's what makes all this extremely complicated.
It does also involve 4-day ceasefire, and they're going to be releasing these hostages, or at least Hamas are going to be releasing the Israeli hostages in drips of sort of 10 at a time over the next few days. And, of course, nobody knows which ones are going to be released, so incredibly stressful for their families, and also leaves, I think, 190 of them still being held in Gaza, and Israel pledging we will not rest until everybody is home. So no sense really of peace, even though this is major and significant progress.
Yeah, the absolute emotional horror of one, the families not knowing which ones are going to be released, or if anyone gets any say which ones Hamas release, and also the poor hostages themselves in a situation of seeing other people being released and then being left behind. Also, Israel, as we've discussed, is doing a deal here with an organisation which has one policy, which is to destroy Israel and kill as many Jews as possible. So, again, it's sort of how long will this ceasefire last? Will it be a true ceasefire? There's also issues of, the conflicts. There was the death yesterday of a Hamas leader's grandchild as well, I think, and there's all this sort of other thing of how it keeps seesawing backwards and forwards. But again, Israel's in a pretty thankless position as to how it gets these hostages back.
But anything that stops the bloodshed, it's been 6 weeks of horror, hasn't it, Eamonn? We've just, day after day, hearing of these terrible deaths on both sides, at least a little bit of a reprieve. And that's due to kick in from tomorrow.
Yeah. Let's talk about the state visit, the South Korean state visit to England, and the King greeting the South Korean president. But it is neither of them who are stealing the show, Andy. The Princess of Wales, looking resplendent.
Yes. Have I got to hold the images up? We've got them up. We've got them up. There she is. There we are. Dazzling in red, and the Mail and every newspaper is going absolutely bananas about it. They are welcoming the South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol at Buckingham Palace last night, and I believe they're still there today. But the Queen, Kate Middleton, has stole the show in a striking scarlet red cape, and
That's not why she stole the show. She stole the show because she flashed her leg getting out of the car, which we don't seem to be. We denying the pictures, are we, this morning?
We've got the Mail front page if you wanted to.
I was a bit amazed that, well, it's almost like an upskirting shot. It's almost like we were talking about how it's almost like those pictures of celebrities in the 2000s.
Yeah, there it is there. Let's see it.
Well, when she stands up, it's not at all.
Let's just show it, Andy, to camera there.
I'm trying my best.
There you go. A little bit of leg on display from the Princess of Wales, but not to objectify her. She also looks stunning in front of the Express. You can see she was wearing her formal wear to the state banquet last night. And it's the first time we've seen the King in action. He was trying to make a bit of cultural reference. He's fluffed one of his lines, didn't he? Which I'm sure he's mortified about, sort of trying to sound down with the kids and saying, "Oh, we've got the Korean version of James Bond, and we've got the Beatles version from Korea." And then he said the wrong name, and you sort of think, "Oh gosh." Anyway. But, it's the first time we've seen him hosting one of these state visits, so interesting. The King.
What are they saying then? It's the second one of his reign, but the first one as king. What does that mean?
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't.
Perhaps it was after his coronation.
Maybe. There was one.
Anyway.
Yeah, and she wore a tiara that hadn't been worn since 1923, if you're interested in that sort of thing.
I am interested in that sort of thing. And actually, the royal Twitchers that I follow, because I'm sad, on Instagram were all... And Kinsey Schofield and I were messaging. She's a commentator we have on the programme from LA. We're messaging about how loved up Wills and Kate looked, because the camera caught an angle of them arm in arm and then sort of brushing hands. And you never see them really doing, especially not in a formal setting like that. So anyway, the royal Twitchers were loving a bit of that. So there we go. Anyway, I'll move swiftly on.
It's amazing the things that I would look at and say, that's choreographed for the cameras, so that's false, and you're taken back. I mean, it's like Meghan and Harry. She never has her hands off him.
Yeah, but
right?
She doesn't follow royal protocol.
No, I'm saying, but that's all false. That's all done. Just let's make it look as if we're in love and everything.
Well, I think she's a touchy-feely anyway.
I think it's... Well, you see, I just look and I think, I find it unbelievable there are people as naive as you who are taken in, sucked in by all this nonsense all the time.
You're just so cynical and miserable. I just like to see love.
It's nice to see a bit of romance. We've got so many horrible stories.
Thank you.
Maybe it is choreographed.
Choose everything to be miserable, or
it's
you
nice
can
to see
say,
a bit of glamour.
Yeah, young and gorgeous and in love.
If Wills and Kate aren't in love, who is? Come on, Eamonn, we've got to have hope.
Right, OK, I'm sure they're a perfectly average couple from that point of view, but this idea that they're love's young dream, I don't go for, no. Now, let's get Anna in the Daily Mail, page 4 today. Strict new curbs on transgender school madness, they are calling it.
Yes, so the Education Secretary is about to unveil the long-awaited plan for schools in terms of new rules and new guidance for teachers and on children who want to change their gender, who want to say, call me by a different name, or I want to change my classroom. And there has been some talk that this guidance would be watered down, and it appears that it's actually been strengthened. So they're saying that there will be a presumption against children changing their names, pronouns and uniforms, and that parents, and this is the crucial bit that ministers have wanted to bring in, that parents will be informed if this happens, because at the moment there's concern that teachers are very, very not sure what to do when this happens in school, and there have been cases of teachers being almost punished for saying anything or trying to,
There's this absolute madness at the moment where teachers have to get permission to give kids from parents to give kids paracetamol, but they don't have to tell parents if their kid's changing gender without them knowing, which is bizarre. But yeah, parents are now going to be informed. They're not going to have. They're still going to have separate loos in different schools. This is agreed between Kemi Badenoch and Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary. And an interesting stat in the Mail piece. Sorry to interrupt, Anna. There was a LGBT charity said that 87% of secondary school teachers now had experience of a pupil in their class changing gender or asking to use different pronouns. So
fascinating, yeah.
You see, the different loo thing is interesting because I would have just worried that from a bullying point of view, there's all eyes upon that loo. Who's actually using that loo and why are they using that loo? And surely that then makes these kids a bit more susceptible to teasing and worse than that.
Yeah. And also, if schools have to put extra loos in, I mean, a lot of schools across the country haven't got money to fix the roof, and the roof's leaking, the heating doesn't work, and there isn't proper equipment, and it's like, we need a one loo for one pupil.
Well, and there's that worry for business, because that was the big idea from government a while ago, that businesses should solve this issue by having an extra, like the disabled loos, transgender loo, but again, that's just extra regulation, red tape for people to comply with.
Should we talk about Top Gear? It looks as though the brand has finally come to the end of the road.
No, it hasn't.
Well,
no,
OK, slightly different story.
It's been rested.
OK.
Rested?
Which is a different...
It's gone into the pit. What's the phrase? I'm thinking of a car analogy.
Yeah. It stopped in the pit.
It's a money pit for the BBC, right? So they're not going to...
It never used to be, though.
No.
It never... Only when Jeremy Clarkson came along, it became that.
Yeah. But I can see that from a marketing point of view, the BBC are going to be reluctant to say that's it forever and a day on this. So
yeah, I think it's such a money spinner and such a big brand for Top Gear. I mean, it's got all the different licensing around the world that I don't think I'll ever completely wave goodbye to it, but they've ominously said they're resting it. And I'd also, obviously, I'm not convinced that the new setup gets quite the smash viewing figures that it previously did with Clarkson, Hammond, etc., etc. But it's part for the foreseeable future. This is after Andrew Flintoff got a £9 million payout because of a really serious injury on set. On a stunt they were doing.
Yeah.
Health and Safety have now said they have to rigorously manage every single aspect, which is, one, going to do a lot of things. One, ramp up costs, and two, the sort of spectacular, outrageous things that we used to watch, they're probably going to be dialed a lot further down. And obviously we've had the Flintoff accident, we had the Hammond accident where he very nearly died, we had the Clarkson punch-up with a producer over a steak, and all this sort of thing with previous iterations of Top Gear. And I think they're maybe thinking, well, a lot of shows, BBC having to make cutbacks, they've rested it. I dare say they'll still show a lot of the repeats.
Well, Andy, we're having to cut back on you. I'm sorry to say, just at this state. We have a government minister to talk to right after this short break. Don't go away.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with Israel.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Welcome back. Well, ahead of the government's autumn statement later this afternoon, we can talk now to the chair of the Commons Treasury Committee, Harriet Baldwin MP. Good morning to you, Harriet. We've done a number of interviews over the last day, slightly frustrating because there's only so much that you're prepared to say to us. But it feels like quite a lot has...
They're saying everything to us.
Well, exactly. Quite a
Sunday
lot.
they were saying nothing.
Yeah.
Today you're vomiting everything out to us. So
well, let's pick
you
apart...
might as well get it off your chest, Harriet.
Can we pick apart what we do know? It sounds like 28 million people can see some kind of tweak to their national insurance. And I just want to know the rationale behind why you've gone for that rather than unfreezing personal tax bans, because we know how much that kind of stealth tax upsets people.
Well, I think it is going to be a real turning point today in terms of the autumn statement, because if you cast your mind back to a year ago, inflation was running over 11%. Now we've got a backdrop of it having fallen to 4.6%, and the Bank of England forecasting that it'll fall further next year. And so that's a backdrop where Jeremy Hunt, who had to raise taxes last year, can look actually at giving some of that back to the hard-working people of the UK. And so I think we will see that in today's autumn statement, although as a backbencher I haven't been given full sight.
No, but what would be the reasoning that you would go specifically for national insurance as opposed to unfreezing these personal tax bans?
Yeah, I think those are going to be some of the choices that he'll be explaining today in the Commons. I think we'll also see him make some important announcements in terms of business taxes and business investment. One of the things that will help the UK to grow more strongly next year is if he can encourage businesses to invest. So I think we'll see something on that. I also would be very surprised if he didn't carry on with the temporary cut in terms of a fuel duty as well.
OK, use of temporary, really important word there. These business cuts that we can expect to see, will they be permanent then? Because we know that business like security, they often plan for up to 3 years in advance. The changes that he's making, and he's pleased to say, the biggest tax cuts for business in 50 years, if they're just for a year, it's no good to anyone, surely.
Yeah, it is a big tax cut, and it's £27 billion was where it was scored last year when it was introduced for the first 3 years. I think that what will be interesting to myself and colleagues on the Treasury Select Committee is to see what impact that's having, because if it's paying for itself with increased investment and increased business revenues, then of course I think the case for making that permanent is going to be a strong one, and it's certainly something that I was able to ask the Chancellor about in the Commons last week, and I do think that he'd be very tempted to do that if the headroom allows.
Living wage, how are you planning to pay for this increase? This is a significant increase being announced yesterday.
Yeah, I think that if you look at the numbers that the Office for Budget Responsibility has been publishing each month, we think that there's probably about £20 billion of headroom, and that's because you and I, through those frozen tax levels and also businesses, we have actually ended up paying more tax this year than was planned in last year's budget. So I think that today gives the Chancellor an opportunity to give some of that back to the hard-working businesses and people of this country so that we can grow the economy more rapidly next year.
And forgive me, I'm not an economist. We talk a lot about this issue of having more headroom than we expected. I mean, does that necessarily mean that we're in a good position? Because we're still borrowing a huge amount, aren't we? And one of the government's 5 pledges was to manage the debt. How's that going if we're then making these big investments on things like the living wage, and yet we can't settle on the doctors and the other, you know, paid deals that we're in negotiations over?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We've got to be in a position today to be able to see that debt is continuing to fall. I think both the Chancellor and the Prime Minister have really made a point of emphasising that. I would continue to expect to see debt falling. And I think really importantly for them to make the contrast between the Labour Party policy of borrowing an extra £28 billion a year, which of course ends up on people's tax returns in due course. So I think there will be an opportunity today for the Chancellor to show a different economic approach to the Labour Party.
Harriet, how are you feeling today? Do you feel when the announcement is made later on today that you're on an election footing?
I think I will feel that we've reached a turning point in terms of the UK economy, that after all of the pain and difficulty that we've had to go through with Putin's evil invasion of Ukraine, putting up prices for every family in this country. Yes, inflation is still too high. We still need to make sure that that gets back in its box. It's the worst tax on the British economy. It's a tax on every home and every household. And so it's really important that we don't lose sight of that, but at the same time it feels like a turning point because the Chancellor will be able to give back some of the money that he'd announced in tax rises last year.
Bit of a make or break day for the Chancellor. Do you think that he's going to come out of this looking good?
I think that he has, and I've said this to him on the record in the Commons, and I've said he's been quite lucky as Chancellor, and I think to some extent he has, because the amount of the gas price last winter, for example, it could have been much worse. He helped every household last winter with up to £3,300 of help, and this year, of course, we're going into a winter where prices are not as bad as last winter. That's, I think, a good backdrop, and I think he will be able to give back some tax to the British people today.
Harriet Baldwin, have a good day. Harriet is the chair of the Commons Treasury Committee. Thank you for your time from the darkness of Westminster today. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, a very good morning to you. It has just gone 7 o'clock and it's Wednesday, the 22nd of November. You're tuned into Breakfast with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Nice to have you on board, whether you're watching or you're listening. We're on TV, we're online, we're on the radio and leading the news this morning.
A weekend camping trip turned to tragedy in Wales as the bodies of 4 missing teenagers have been recovered from a car wreck. Our reporter Theo Jacumba is in Garrick for us.
I'll have the latest from Garrick, where the police found 4 missing young teenagers following an extensive search here in North Wales.
A breakthrough in the Middle East. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 4-day truce to swap Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners. We'll be crossing to Tel Aviv in just a moment to get the latest on that deal.
And the biggest cuts in 50 years, that's what the Chancellor's expected to say today as he delivers his autumn budget and the Conservatives get to pledge to put more money back into the economy. We'll have all the latest here on GB News throughout the morning.
COVID inquiry goes on and on and on. It continues today. Professor Jonathan Van Tam is set to give testimony.
And that comes after the country's Chief Medical Officer, Professor Sir Chris Whitty, spoke yesterday of the mixed messages sent at the beginning of the pandemic.
Your sport this morning, courtesy of Paul Coit.
Yes, good morning. Wales don't manage to beat Turkey, which means it's the playoffs for them. Rory and Tiger, their indoor golf sensation, lays in tatters. Because FFP is so complicated, Eamonn, I thought we'd play a birthday legends tennis game. Or a tennis birthday game. Or a birthday tennis game.
What's that got to do with the golf?
Well, that's another thing. So we'll do the golf, we'll do the football, and then we'll do...
Oh, it's all going to happen.
Honestly...
It's a medley.
It's a medley. That's exactly.
Do you remember the word compendium?
I do remember the word compendium.
Yes, it was always a compendium of sports games and mixtures. You used to get these boxes for Christmas and whatever, and it was a compendium of sport.
What was in the box?
That's what you have offered us.
We're going to call it not the Sports Bulletin now.
I tell you what used to be there.
Cornucopia.
Blow football.
Oh, yes.
Blow football was always there.
You know what?
What?
This is a great table for blow football.
It's a great
I mean, it really is.
Good table for Subudio as well.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a compendium.
I'm going to bring some games.
Cornucopia.
Going to be unlocked.
Cornucopia. Quite cornucopia of sport.
And will it be utopia with the weather?
Yes.
Here's Annie Sheckler.
Good morning. Well, there'll be some more autumnal sunshine out there today, but by the end of the week, we'll see signs of winter. Now, find out more with me later on.
Right, you've been very good at getting in touch with us. There it is, gbviews@gbnews.com. And a lot of you just, aren't going for the excitement or the media excitement there is around what the government is doing with the economy and certain tax cuts and things today. Tony is saying we've paid enough tax over the years, and here we are paying tax again. Will the multi-millionaire Chancellor allow pensioners to be tax-free?
You have to ask yourself, we've had 13 years of austerity, we've had 13 years of excuses, Brexit, pandemic, wars, and now we pull the rabbit out of the hat for tax cuts just in time for an election. It will take a miracle to sort this mess out, says Teresa Huntington.
So Jan's saying, what are you going to do about the 22 billion of COVID fraud? Are you going to haul any of that back again? The Chancellor's only giving us our money back. I don't know why they think it's their money, says Michael Edwards. So, a lot of you just, aren't too excited by any of this yet. Keep those views coming in. Let us know how you think.
To Wales first this morning, and 4 teenagers who disappeared on a weekend camping trip to Snowdonia in Wales have been found dead after their car was discovered submerged in a river.
This is such a sad story, and a major search was launched after Jevon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Henderson and Hugo Morris failed to return from that camping trip.
Well, police confirmed that their car left the road in Garrig near Tremedog, which is where the bodies were recovered.
Police says it appears to have been a tragic accident. The 4 boys, all students at Shrewsbury College, were doing A-levels.
Well, joining us now is GB News reporter Theo Jacumba, who's at Gwynedd for us this morning. Theo, it sounds like the weather was dreadful at the weekend. Their ages between 16 and 18, relatively new drivers, and it certainly sounds as though this was a terrible accident.
Yes, well, the weather conditions, as we've heard, were not in best conditions on Sunday. And the roads around here are windy and narrow and do need some skill to drive, particularly in that kind of weather. But yesterday, the Wales North Police confirmed that 4 bodies were found in an overturned car which was partially in water. Now, it's a difficult moment, not only for the families, but those who know them as well, and of course the community as they come to terms with what's happened. In the last 12 hours or so, I'd say there's been an outpouring of condolences from not only the college that they attended in Shrewsbury, which is just around an hour, 50 minutes from where we are this morning, and local football clubs and so on, those who knew them as well. Now, as I say, 4 bodies were found in that extensive search for the missing teenagers who were last heard from on Sunday in what appears to have been a tragic accident, according to North Wales Police. They were Jevon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Henderson and Hugo Morris, all aged between the age of 16 and 18, and had recently started their A-levels and going into adulthood. This would have been something their parents had given them a bit more freedom, but in the weeks leading up to Christmas, this isn't the news that the families would have wanted following the police's investigations over the last couple of days. Now, we understand from North Wales Police that an investigation is underway to establish how this accident happened just on the road, just over my right shoulder, and they said I would ask the families of these boys are afforded privacy at this desperate time.
Thanks, Theo. Thank you very much indeed. And I just want to point out that in about an hour's time, we're going to be live to the school where the 4 boys attended, and just such shock and sadness with that. They all just look such nice lads, nice characters. Terrible, terrible accident from which they didn't survive, and our thoughts and prayers go to their families.
Whole lives ahead of them, and every parent's worst nightmare. And we send our best to their families, of course. Good news, though, this morning. A major development in the Middle East overnight. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 4-day truce in Gaza.
Well, under the proposed deal, it'll see Hamas release 50 women and children hostages in exchange for 150 Palestinian women and children in Israeli jails.
Well, in a late-night cabinet meeting, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the return of hostages was a sacred and top goal, whilst reiterating Israel will continue to seek a total victory.
The deal was mediated by Qatar and Egypt, and it will also allow for hundreds of humanitarian, medical and fuel aid trucks to enter all parts of the Gaza Strip.
Well, joining us now is local journalist Yotam Confino, who is in Tel Aviv. Good morning to you, Yotam. This all happened late last night, our time, after the Israeli parliament or government voted to back this deal. There'd been talk and lots of positive noises coming from America over the last few days, but it certainly looks this time tomorrow, hopefully, as though there might be some movement in all of this.
Absolutely. Within the next 24 hours, the deal is set to go in motion and the ceasefire is set to be implemented. But within those 24 hours, Israelis who oppose the deal, for whatever reason they might have, they have a chance to file a petition with the Supreme Court. We know that there are some hostages, some families of hostages that have been opposed to a deal that doesn't include everyone. But of course, this is good news for most Israelis. A lot of Israelis were fearing that they would never see any of these hostages. So within 24 hours, it will be implemented, and then it will be a gradual release of the hostages. And Israel has apparently agreed that after this 4-day truce, it will accept to extend the ceasefire for an additional 24 hours for every 10 hostages that Hamas can release.
What will this mean in terms of Hamas, though, with the release of 150 women and under-19s from prisons in Israel? There's always this concern. Obviously, there's this imbalance in the numbers, but also in the past, we've seen Hamas terrorists being released from Israel, and that obviously is problematic when you have a situation where Hamas is such a threat, frankly.
Absolutely, and the families of the hostages have made it very clear from the beginning that they oppose releasing any of the Hamas terrorists that participated in the October 7 massacre for obvious reasons. Hamas has insisted from day one that it wanted members of Hamas in prisons, in Israeli prisons, released, but eventually it had to compromise the same way as Israel had to compromise. So now it's getting Palestinian women and minors who are in jail for whatever reasons they're in jail for, but they aren't convicted of murder, as far as I understand.
OK, Jonathan, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to date with that situation. Let's go back to the Chancellor's statement, which will happen after Prime Minister's questions around 12:30 today. Laurie Laird, the economics editor, joins us in the studio. Are you getting excited about this, or is it just all smoke and mirrors that we're looking at?
Look, I always get excited about economic stuff, so take that with a grain of salt. But I think it's really interesting. We're one of the few countries where we have two fiscal events a year. And it's, I don't know that it's actually healthy, because you have a chancellor who is tempted to tinker with things twice a year, and it doesn't give predictability or any kind of long-term stability in the tax situation. This is what business wants. Business, if they're going to invest in the UK, they want to know the tax situation is going to be the case for years to come. Investment is a long-term thing. And we have a situation right now where business is saying, wait a second, the tax situation is changing all the time. For the first time last year, there was more foreign direct investment in France than there was in the UK. And one of the problems is a lack of stability, a lack of predictability.
Brexit? Brexit a problem?
Brexit's part of it, but it is also more of, but Brexit is done. Business knows this. There's still very attractive things about investing in the UK. But the problem is governments keep changing. Policy keeps changing.
Yes, and economics keep changing. Isabel was referring earlier to the amount of debt that we are not paying off. This was one of Sunak's big goals and aims, to do this. And it now just works out because we pay more, or we could pay more in the interest that we are being charged on our debt. It leaves us some wriggle room to borrow against that debt, to borrow even more and not pay off what we're supposed to be paying off.
And remember, Rishi Sunak was the responsible steward for the economy, right? Debt is at about 100% or just below 100% of GDP. This is the highest we've seen since the 60s. Debt isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? If you borrow for long-term improvements, that's not such a bad thing, particularly not that long ago when interest rates were essentially zero.
He made it one of his own pledges, so he's targeting it.
Absolutely, and right, he was an ex-chancellor. We thought, and after Liz Truss, we thought that he was quite responsible. Problem is that interest rates have risen so high that servicing that debt could be, in the years to come, about 4% of GDP, which is almost the same amount as the education budget. So that puts things in perspective. Debt isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we had Harriet Baldwin just a few moments ago talking about fiscal headroom. This is a really interesting concept. We have more room to borrow because borrowing is less than predicted. So this fiscal headroom is all based on predictions and forecasts.
Yeah, and this is what Liz Truss hated, was the OBR and the power that the Office for Budget Responsibility held, and she wanted to get rid of this kind of institutional think, and that was sort of seen as a bit catastrophic.
Absolutely. The Treasury and the OBR, it was all sort of groupthink, and she knew a little bit better what we saw.
I think it was interesting, yesterday we started to hear from the Governor of the Bank of England, and he was saying, hang on a minute, we might have seen inflation halve, but I'm still extremely concerned about inflation. And minutes later we hear living wage is going to be boosted by a huge whopping, is it 15% or something? And yet all year we've been told we can't settle with the doctors, we can't settle with various other unions because there isn't the money and it could be inflationary. The messaging is hugely confusing, and it makes me think this is all just politics.
I am so glad you brought this up. This is something that's been on my mind. And you're right, the Bank of England was before the Treasury Select Committee yesterday. And a few moments ago you had Harriet Baldwin on. She chairs the TSC. Treasury Select Committee is amazing. If you let me digress, it's sort of government working. MPs quizzing people at the Bank of England. It really restores my faith in government. But the messaging from the Bank of England yesterday was, wait a second, inflation is still high. Don't think about interest rate cuts, despite the fact we had the chief economist of the Bank of England a few weeks ago saying, we could have interest rate cuts. You're right about the messaging. But Andrew Bailey is saying, inflation's still high, and it is. At 4.6%, that means we're down from 10%, but prices are still rising. So this is important. And if we put more money in people's pockets with the rise in the living wage could be inflationary.
Well, Sunak and Jeremy Hunt will be very keen to claim they are putting more money in people's pockets. What is the truth? Are they doing it, or is Andrew Bailey at the Bank of England doing it?
Or neither.
He was asked about that yesterday because Sunak and Hunt have said, job done. We halved inflation. We said we were going to. We halved it. Doesn't have much to do with fiscal policy, with what the government does. This is all the Bank of England. For Sunak and Hunt to take credit for this is a little bit misplaced.
Well, the cheek of it.
I just want to ask you, Laurie, before we say goodbye, because there's been a breaking story this morning, which for people who followed ChatGPT, and we know that this is the future of AI, there's been lots of developments in this, and I know you have an interest in it. This is the boss of ChatGPT, and he works at OpenAI. He got spectacularly fired on Friday. He then said he was off to Microsoft. Then over the weekend, hundreds of the people for his former company absolutely outraged, and he's now been reinstated as chief exec. So what is going on?
Honestly, spectacularly fired, spectacularly rehired. They've strengthened the board with a guy called Larry Summers, an ex-Treasury secretary. And I think what's really important here is AI is what we're hearing is the wave of the future. We don't know how transformative it will be. But look, if OpenAI can't govern itself, how on earth can it govern AI and how it affects our lives going forward? This is an incredible story. But these guys are the future with AI. They're leading the industry.
And what is it about Sam Altman that everybody loves so much? I would love to do a deep dive into Sam Altman.
Right? Everyone loved him until he was dumb.
Yeah, interesting. OK, thanks very much, Laurie.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Laurie Laird, the economic commentator. The government's most senior advisor during COVID says the plan in place before the pandemic was, I quote, woefully deficient.
The inquiry heard evidence from Professor Sir Chris Whitty last night. Let's take a listen.
Was very aware that we essentially had two different things we were trying to balance. The risk of going too early, in which case you get all the damages from this with actually fairly minimal impact on the epidemic, and the risk of going too late, in which case you get all the problems of the pandemic running away. Now, as we will, I'm sure, come on to, my view is, with the benefit of hindsight, we went a bit too late on the first wave.
Were you aware, Stephen Dorrell, former Health Secretary, that you were sitting on a woefully deficient policy? Was it that obvious, or was it just something no one ever considered, no one ever thought would happen?
Well, I don't think anyone knew that the pandemic was going to take the shape that it did. But I think there were 2 points to make in reply to that. The first was that there had been a dry run. I think it was between 2 and 3 years before the pandemic, which had shown that there were inadequate preparations in social care in particular, availability of PPE, several of the things that became clear during the pandemic had actually been anticipated as a result of a dry run in that, from memory, 2017. Which the government at the time had covered up because it was embarrassing. So that's the first thing that I think we need to remember. The second thing is that what we've heard during the evidence sessions is that the government was slow and chaotic in the way that it responded to the changing picture. Of course, it wasn't easy, but truth is, other governments, including, even for goodness sake, Donald Trump, did it better.
Yeah. Stephen, let me ask you something. You talk about being slow and chaotic. Some people would say, and I'm just interested in just seeing the views from our listeners and viewers today, they are still quite affected by COVID fraud. Right, so they don't like this, and they're putting questions to us today, saying, right, so the Conservatives are putting everything right. Do they intend to recover the 22 billion of COVID fraud? Now, that might be a priority with the electorate. Do you think it's a priority with the government?
Well, I think it's a separate issue, if I may say so. If by COVID fraud you mean people who fraudulently got access to public funds and things moved too quickly. That's, I think, a different question. The question that Chris Whitty was talking about yesterday did the government respond quickly enough, and was it sufficiently prepared to take the steps necessary to control a pandemic? Nobody's in favour of handing out public money in a way that leaves the government open to fraud.
No, but what I'm asking you, what I'm asking you is, as a former health secretary, what priority do you think should be given to that by the current government, or do we just write it off?
No, I don't think you just write it off. I think the current government should be ensuring, first of all, that it's properly prepared for future possible pandemics and that it learns the lessons in terms of the public health response. And of course, it's true that if public money was handed out with inadequate safeguards, first of all, steps should be taken to recover it. And secondly, we should ensure that the lessons in that respect are learnt as well. But they are two completely separate topics.
If you see the inquiry, which obviously is its own intention, as a sort of lesson learning process, what did you make of what we heard yesterday? I felt it was a very different approach to giving evidence to the previous day from the former chief scientific officer. A noticeable difference, I guess, is that Professor Sir Chris Whitty is still in that role, working for the government as our chief medical officer, and he was very careful, wasn't he, not to be drawn into personality comments or political comments. But I do think, obviously I'm interested in what you think of whether we're learning the lessons, but also whether or not you agree with what he said when he said that actually if I'd been at MI5 and come out and said to do something, ministers would have listened, but because I was the CMO, they kind of didn't take it as seriously.
Yes, I'd put it slightly differently. I completely agree with you that Chris Whitty gave evidence in a different way from many of the previous witnesses. And I was delighted by the way that he did, because it does seem to me that once you move beyond the politics to learning the public policy lessons that are available to be learned, Chris Whitty was addressing one of the key ones, which is how you handle scientific evidence when the scientists themselves inevitably are disagreeing, partly because it's a very new area of science. The ministers, at the beginning of the pandemic, were prone to say we're, quote, following the science, as though science was speaking with one single voice. Of course it's true that when we're addressing something which wasn't previously known and which scientists themselves are learning as they go along, we do need to have a more adult discussion, public discussion, about how we feed scientific evidence into the inevitable responsibility of ministers to make decisions.
Fascinating listening to you. Thank you very much indeed for your interpretation and your analysis. We're out of time, so we've got to say goodbye to you, but appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to take a look at the weather now. Annie Shuttleworth with all of your Wednesday details.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It'll be a cloudier day for many of us. There'll be some rain in the north, but there'll still be some sunshine on offer across southern areas. So we've got off to a slightly cloudier, damper start across parts of Scotland, northern England as well. That rain will persist, particularly in the north, but it will dry up across the Pennines. We'll also see plenty of dry weather across the bulk of England and Wales. Some sunshine developing by this afternoon once again. So a similar feel to yesterday by later on this afternoon. Highs of around 12 degrees. It'll also be as high as around 14 degrees across eastern areas of Scotland, despite the rain and cloud here. Then through this evening, it stays fairly cloudy across the board. The rain will start to pep up, though, across the far north of Scotland as that front starts to finally make its progress southwards. So particularly across the Shetland Isles, it's going to turn quite blustery and wintry up there. Across the south, though, staying cloudy, a little bit murkier than last night, with only lows of around 11 degrees for some towns and cities down here. So a milder start tomorrow. And the rain will then shift throughout Thursday further south, with that colder air becoming more widespread as we head into Friday from the north. So we've got some wintry showers starting to fall across the hills of Scotland, and we could see some overnight frosts over the weekend in southern areas. But on Thursday, highs will be around average of 12 degrees.
Annie has a nice disposition about herself.
Very sunny disposition.
She
even
has a
as
sunny
she tells
disposition,
us there's a frost on the way.
Yes, but she does it in a nice way, dressed in a nice summery
I could
dress.
learn a lot, basically.
Listen, watch and learn. I didn't say a thing there, but the lovely Annie Shuttleworth there. I bet you they call her Shuttlecock.
Yeah,
well.
probably. Yeah, maybe she's good at badminton. Who knows?
Usual name.
She's
Anyway,
good at everything, apparently.
Listen, stop oil. Just stop oil.
So you're in your
just
colours?
be stopping oil, or should we not? Because they're at it again. They're marching through London. But look, do you care? Have they lost their effect? Is anybody really paying attention?
Well, yeah, we'll be debating that all after this.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified on playing strip poker with Israel.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camila Tomini Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It. You see, you have a go at me for Googling.
No, I'm simply asking you, is
now
Nigel...
There you are, lingering over page 5 of
I'm
the
asking
Sun,
you,
where Nigel Farage's bottom is on full display.
I'm asking you, is he wearing a thong?
Forcing me to look at his bottom again.
Well, is this a ripple of fat and the bum crack there,
No,
or is it the thong?
He's not right. Oh, it could be his microphone strap, or it could just be a branch
why would they
from a
put his
tree.
microphone strap between his buttocks?
Just to explain, if you haven't seen the sun today, it looks like a T-bar. So you've got his bottom crack and then a line across the top.
It's a thong. Look, I know a thong when I see one.
Oh, do you? Yeah,
In fact, this quite hurts me sitting here just at the minute when we just tug
that whale tail sticking out
it's
there.
all OK. Right, Just Stop Oil, that's what we're going to talk about today. They're at it again. So this week they have a week-long series of protests. They're marching through London and they say they will not stop, they will not go away until they win. Right? And then the police made arrests on Monday, and it was all against old people, basically, which got them a lot of sympathy.
Well, with the protest group continuing to make headlines every day, we're asking, are Just Stop Oil running rings around the government, or have they ruined their own message on climate change?
Two friends of the programme to talk about, author of Not Zero, that's Ross Clark. He thinks they are becoming increasingly irrelevant, interestingly, where meteorologist Jim Dale says Just Stop Oil message is as important as ever. Good morning to both of you. Ross, first of all, here's my thing, Ross. Are they just about stopping oil, or are they more than that? Are they more sinister than that?
No. Well, this week they seem to have adopted the Palestinian cause, which has got a lot to do with oil and fossil fuel use, I have to say, which I think reveals really that what they've been all along, which is they are a sort of all-purpose left-wing anti-capitalist group which is dressed up in environmental clothes, just like Extinction Rebellion before them, which came out of an organisation called Rising Up. This whole movement sort of evolved from the anti-capitalist protests of the early 2000s, but sort of didn't make much progress on killing off capitalism then. But then they sort of jumped on the climate as a sort of bandwagon, which could attract sort of lots of nice middle-class people who thought they're sort of protesting against climate change, but actually, you know, find themselves wrapped up in these anti-capitalism, pro-Palestinian and other causes.
Right, OK. Well, let's unpack some of that with Jim Dale. I mean, it's amazing how a debate around the climate can become something also about, you know, capitalism, democracy, the Middle East and classism. Is that the fault of Just Stop Oil, that they have basically twisted the message, which is important? We've seen headlines this week about a 3% increase in temperature and made people get really angry about all of those issues.
Yeah, no, that's Ross putting his gloss over living in a dark cave as he is, putting his gloss over what he believes. Just Stop Oil, really, maybe they should be called Just Stop Climate Change. I think it's a better message, to be honest with you. But those people who are marching, although I for one can say some of the tactics in the past have not been where they should have been, and their thought pattern in that direction hasn't been where it needs to be. In other words, to get the sympathy of the public, their actual message in terms of climate change, and you've just mentioned it, Isabel, that figure that came out from the United Nations. And notice Ross didn't mention anything about climate change whatsoever. I know the reasons behind that precisely. So look, climate change continues to go on. That warning about 3 degrees rather than 1.5 degrees. So that'll be like 3 drops of arsenic in your coffee rather than just 1. That's the direction of travel, and that's what we're getting older, and that's what Just Stop Oil, Just Stop Climate Change are trying to sort of bring to the attention of the government.
And that whole thing, Jim, and that's why they should be hiring someone like you to get their media message across, because I think they've lost that so often as to what they are about. And I think more people may be sympathetic with them. You know, Ross was saying there, what's the Palestinian situation got to do with them? Why are they getting mixed up in all of that? What is this message? And as you say, if you just say, just stop climate change, well, that's what it's about, bottom line, Jim, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's smack on. That's exactly, you don't want to be diverted. What Ross is trying to do is divert. That's what he's trying to do, mentioning all of these other...
No, he's not trying to divert. He's saying, Ross, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that Just Stop Oil are into diversion.
I don't think I've diverted Just Stop Oil into Palestinian protests. I mean, it's what they're doing. No, I mean, come on, Jim. Look, most people want to reduce carbon emissions, and government has a commitment to do it. But what Just Stop Oil are demanding is ridiculous. End of all fossil fuels in the next 8 years. I mean, that is a recipe for mass poverty.
Well, except, Ross, they haven't necessarily
invest in green energy. You need fossil fuels because you need to make the steel for the wind turbines. You need the concrete for the foundations. It's an extremely complex business to decarbonise the economy, and the sort of simplistic ideas that sort of Just Stop Oil come up with, they don't get us there because they're just rejecting industrial civilization.
Okay, but I think what Just Stop Oil might say is that the economy is being put ahead of the climate, and actually that some of so talking about decarbonising the economy, they're actually recarbonising the economy by going ahead with the Rosebank licences, oil and gas licences, most of which are going to be sold on the international market. Doesn't really help us with energy security here. There are lots of questions about why all of this is happening. And yes, I think we can probably all agree the messaging's being lost, but do you accept any of those arguments?
Look, I mean, however much we might want to reduce carbon emissions, reduce dependence on fossil fuels, which are good things, we are going to remain dependent on oil for many, many years to come, not just for energy, but for plastics industry, fertilizer. These are industries which rely on crude oil. And if we don't produce it ourselves, it's just going to be produced somewhere else in the world. And, when I see Just Stop Oil jumping up and down, marching slowly, blocking motorways and everything, I just think, well, they're doing the Saudis' dirty work for them. They're just trying to sort of suppress oil production and gas production in Europe to make us more reliant on oil and gas from the Middle East. And I mean, it's just completely.
Let me tell you what Just Stop Oil. Let me tell you what Just Stop Oil are trying to do. They're sending a message. It might be, as I say, it might be scratchy. It might not be exactly what everybody wants, but they're trying to remind the government, who are doing the Rosebank projects, etc., that they're not following the science. Now, we've just had a COVID inquiry. We're having a COVID inquiry where exactly the same thing has happened there. And look at the trouble we got in with that. Exactly what's happening in the climate area is the same. They're not following the science, and therefore Just Stop Oil are out there protesting. They're not government. They're not there to they've got no levers to push. They're there as a protest group to remind government and other bodies of what is going wrong around the world.
Gentlemen, unfortunately, I've just got to stop you two now. Time has beaten us. Ross Clark, Jim Dale, very, very interesting to hear you debate. Thank you very much indeed. We've got to leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Something a little bit less contentious.
Oh, I don't know about
sport.
that.
No, what was it? A compendium?
It's our compendium to conundrum and cornucopia.
Isabel was saying less controversial, but let's look at golf first of all. Indoor golf, right? This is hitting off tees inside a massive tent.
I mean, it's huge. And this is run by Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy. They're behind it. The Indoor High-Tech League, they hit at a big screen, and then they have an actual... have a look at it there.
Putting greens.
The putting green that moves around, so it's always very different. But anyway, it was going to start of January. Most of the top golfers in the world were going to take part of it. The tent has collapsed.
Where is it?
The tent, it's in Florida.
Florida.
But the power cut has deflated the dome.
Yes.
There we are. That's how it was. It was almost ready to go, and there's been a power cut, and apparently the generator didn't kick in, so now they've got to put the whole thing off for a year. So it's going to be a year out. It was all ready to go.
But I wonder why they wouldn't have built a permanent structure. They went for the cheap option of a sort of tent, and then that had to be kept inflated.
I mean, if you were Daniel Craig and your Knives Out, you'd say, I can smell this foul play here. It's very bizarre, isn't it? The whole thing has come down.
It looks ripped.
So that's not going to happen now. That's not going to happen at all. Another golf thing. Patrick Cantlay. Do you remember Patrick Cantlay during the Ryder Cup? He was the one that refused to wear his cap.
Yes. I have this thing about these caps anyway.
What is that?
They insult me. So
why do they caps insult you?
Because these people wear these hats in these...
Like Trump.
in unnatural situations. Right. So they're indoors.
Yeah.
And they're wearing a cap for any excuse at all. And you look at it and you say, no, it's because it says Titleist on that or whatever
Of course.
it says.
Yeah. But what about a golfer? A golfer can wear a hat, though, can't they?
Yeah, but
if you wear a cap, it shields you from the sun.
Yeah, but while you're on the course, but not necessarily when you're being interviewed inside in the studio.
Well, the thing is, I think the golfers don't wear, indoors so much.
It's crass.
But you need a cap. It's just like going to play golf without your clubs. You've got to have a cap to shield.
No, I don't wear a cap.
Do you know?
No.
I don't have clubs.
I think you could look very Trump-esque with a cap.
Well, I don't wear one.
Get him a red MAGA cap.
What about if you just wore it back to front?
Did Severiano Ballesteros wear a cap? No,
He
I
didn't.
think you'll find he didn't.
But he had a very low hairline, which shielded his eyes. He didn't need a cap, Sevi.
You're asking on behalf of a friend.
Yes, I am on behalf of a friend. But anyway, the cap Patrick Cantlay wore, and he said he wouldn't wear one for the Ryder Cup, although it turned out that it was a protest that they weren't getting paid. He's now lost his sponsor.
OK,
Goldman Sachs have said, so you're like that. They've pulled out and said, well we're not interested in that.
Let's see what he covers his head with.
Exactly. I wonder. Right. So finally, do you want to do the birthday thing? Have we got time for the birthday thing?
Right.
Two legends of tennis who both celebrate their birthdays today. We haven't done a birthday game for a while. Have a look at them, and I'm sure you'll recognise them both, and I need you to tell me how old you think they are today. On the left, there he is. You know who that is?
Becker.
Boris Becker, three-time Wimbledon champion, two-time Australian Open, one-time US Open, Wormwood Scrubs Open champion, 64 titles. How old is Boris, do you think, today? That's him at 17 when he won.
I would say Boris Becker is about 55.
I was going to say 55 as well.
55 is good.
I'll go 56 just to be different.
56 is the correct
Stop
answer.
it.
Wow.
I just got lucky.
That's amazing.
And
On
is
the
that
right.
Navratilova?
No,
that looks like Billie Jean to me.
Great Billie Jean King.
Looking more glamorous than normal. Big hair.
Six-time Wimbledon champion.
Yeah. She's old. She's very old.
Well, she's been around a long time. She won to help
amazing athlete.
Give us a clue.
66 to 75. She won her first Wimbledon singles title in 1966.
Okay, so
the last one in 75.
75?
75 for Andrew Pearce said 75. He guessed 75.
Did he?
Well, yeah.
What, have you done this quiz with him already? What, outside in the newsroom?
Yeah, I'll give it a little
test.
See how it was going.
I'll say she's.
I think she's
80.
under. You're going to go 80.
Yeah.
It's the correct answer.
Oh.
One each.
Thank you.
One set all. We'll go to
So
a
she was a
tiebreak.
bit older than I thought when she was
She's
winning.
just amazing. I think she's just amazing.
Won everything, and now she has the tournament named after her.
Yeah.
She changed women's tennis.
I'd love
Absolute
to know.
legend.
You talk about certain people you'd like to interview. I'd like to meet her and interview her.
Was that who Michael Jackson was talking about in one of his songs? Billie Jean.
I don't. It's not
I
my
don't
lover.
think it was her.
Sometimes I try to connect the dots in popular culture.
I don't think she was too interested in
tennis.
In
men.
Michael Jackson.
Ah.
But
do you see what I mean?
Let's just gloss over
Billie
that.
Jean wouldn't have been his lover if you're with me.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well,
Okay, let's gloss over that. Sorry.
Maybe she would. Maybe she wouldn't. Who knows?
Who knows? Thank you, my friend.
Pleasure.
Always very interesting. Very, very good. Thank you.
And well played, both of you. Very good.
Thank you.
56,
1-1. It's very
80.
diplomatic of you, because we'd fall out if one of us won both
I
of
know.
them.
I'm just like, thank
It feels
goodness.
like. Yeah, anyway.
Be rubbish on that.
Still to come, famed street artist Banksy. I can't stand Banksy.
He wears a cap, you know.
I used to live in Bristol. He was revered beyond.
What? He's a graffiti artist.
No,
I can't stand graffiti artists
a
either.
guerrilla graffiti artist.
But anyway, what are we talking about Banksy
I don't know. It's
for?
probably in the papers, I guess, or a viral video. We'll find out in Headline Makers next.
It was his real name. Apparently
what's
it's
the
his
secret?
real name. I bet he's called Gordon or something.
Yeah.
Gordon Banksy.
It's me.
Gordon
I'm Banksy. That's it. OK, finally, you got it out of me. It's me, and I'll say no more about it.
After this, OK.
I'm going to set you the challenge.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with Israel.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Akua, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camila Tomini Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Joining us now to go through, goodness me, look at the time, it's 7:47.
Look at the time.
Yes, and...
Sorry.
Do you know you're going to be branded racist?
I'm not. It's affectionate.
Well, I couldn't do a Chinese accent one day.
You forever come in and when I say good morning, you good morning back to me.
That's because you're posh.
Well, I'm doing your Irish back at you.
Because I phoned the Chinese one night and I was telling you the story about people asking, and then you said that was racist because I impersonated the person that answered the phone. But you can sit and jiggle-dee-dee me all day.
What did the time? Where did the time go?
There we are. Well, anyway, Andy Jones is here, and Andy Jones is together with Anna Mikalova, and they're going through the papers. Where do you want to start, guys?
Let's start, Andy, with the layabout, which is a story doing the rounds this morning.
Very good, very good. Yeah, do you ever have a day at work where you don't get much done?
No.
Well, Calais...
I wish.
Exactly. Calais, you'll like this if you're interested in immigration from France into Britain. Calais migrant police chief absent for 14 years.
What?
This is Luc Noel Larcher, who's in charge of riot unit CRS-4, who I've seen in action at the Calais migrant jungle when I was reporting there. They're responsible for enforcement of that border and of control of, stopping people going into the sea, etc. He has been absent for 14 years in terms of going into the office. Instead, he's been starting his day at noon. This is an official report that's been released in France. He starts his day at noon and then devotes almost all of his afternoons to playing golf and swimming in the pool. As a result, his colleagues, who are obviously in charge, are supposed to be stopping the tide of migrants. As a result, colleagues didn't even know what he looked like. And there's also an allegation that Mr. Larcher arranged for police catering to cater his son's engagement party. But the big annoyance here, and really antagonistic...
The annoyance here is he's not catching migrants, illegal migrants.
Well, exactly. The biggest concern here is that we're spending £8 million a day housing migrants in this country in hotels. Constant problem for the government, constant problem for the taxpayer, unable to stem this tide. And the individual who is partially responsible for stopping these people coming across hasn't been in the office for 14 years.
What's going to be done about it? I would like to know.
Surely goes beyond more than one governor in France as well. He said he told Mr. Lacheur's team told Le Parisien that Mr. Lacher was suffering from burnout. 14 years of burnout.
It's a lot of golf.
It's a lot of golf.
Very tiring working from a golf course. Yeah, well, that's a
and also don't forget that the government has arranged £500 million of taxpayer money to be given to France to try and stop these crossings. And the concern is nothing's being done, really. No, they're not actually trying, partly because they don't really have an incentive, frankly, to try, because they want their illegal migrants to go to Britain, you know...
Well, the ones that want to go...
Yeah, because they don't want them to stay in France.
Yeah, on the other end. Well, let's use that sort of analysis of where our money goes and focus on the autumn statement today, Anna. And this is on the front of the Eye. They're saying that he's going to cut personal taxes, but interest rates to remain high until 2025. National insurance seems to be where it's going to happen. Not on unfreezing personal tax bans, as far as I'm aware. Why do you think they've gone for that?
I think it's less expensive because fewer people pay national insurance. So, for example, pensioners don't pay it. So it's a more... on the one hand, it'll affect many people. It will give more money back into people's pockets, but it's less expensive than an income tax cut. I have to say, you know, it is, if he does this, obviously good news for households, for people struggling with the cost of living. But I would take all of this with a big pinch of salt because, yes, there'll be a tax cut, but, it's sort of the Treasury giving with one hand and taking away with another, because by freezing thresholds, everyone has been dragged in to paying more tax. And with high inflation, that's just been happening more than, ever in recent times. So I think the devil will be in the detail, but I suspect, having covered many budgets, that this is all Treasury smoke and mirrors. They'll give a little bit of a giveaway, but I doubt they'll actually meaningfully cut tax for people who've just been paying more and more.
I noticed both of you this morning have called it a budget, and obviously the budget's in the spring, but it's natural for us to say that. But it has become a budget, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's a mini budget. It's technically an autumn statement, but...
It's supposed to be an update
for a few,
on the finances, and this is a total reset of the government's agenda.
They've made it a big one.
It's the start of an election footing, surely.
Absolutely. They've made it a big one. They've chosen... And I think they have decided that, well, number one, the economy is in a better place than they thought it might be, so that's given them wriggle room. They've got a bit more money.
Wouldn't matter where the economy is. They need to give money back to people. They need to buy votes, and that's what it is. That is about... Or else they're sunk. I mean, they may well be sunk anyway. But,
they can't. They've made the judgment call clearly that they can't wait till the spring.
The judgment call that Nigel Farage made, Andy, was to go into the jungle. Last night, a lot of people don't know he was in this plane crash. I didn't realise he was in a car crash. I knew about the plane crash, which was horrendous, but he talked about it on the show last night.
Yeah, obviously big friend of GB News.
More than a friend.
Well, exactly. I'd say colleagues or friends here. I think it's important to get that across. Talking about his plane crash 13 years ago, where I forgot how severe that plane crash was. He discussed live on air on I'm a Celeb last night that the accident was caused by a UKIP banner that was on the back of the plane being caught in the machinery of the plane and then subsequently nosediving. He said he talked vividly about how he remembered the explosion, the plane flipping over, how he was trapped in the fuselage, I suppose you'd say. He said every rib was broken, his sternum was split. He said that he had to rebuild his neck, his leg was in plaster for a year, but Nigel being Nigel, he didn't want to hang around in the hospital and he discharged himself as soon as possible, which is the absolute Farage thing to do. But I didn't realise he was quite so many accidents. He was in a road crash where he was driving in 2016 in Brussels after an automotive failure, and he was also hit in 1985 on a Pelican crossing.
You wouldn't really want to go out with him, would you? You know, be in his company. He might be a bit of a target.
Yeah, you know. I think I'd be looking both ways if I was crossing the road with Nigel.
Indestructible, though. I was on air when that crash happened, and we all thought he was dead, to be honest.
Well, not very few people walk away from
very few people would have survived that.
Let's just, in the time that remains to us, Anna, let's talk about Banksy, the graffiti artist, and his real name has may well be revealed.
Robbie, less catchy than Banksy. Though this is brilliant. An unearthed clip, an old clip from 2003 has been unearthed where he was interviewed by the BBC, and he just casually says, so the presenter asks him, "Are you Robert Banks?" And he just replies, "It's Robbie." So that appears to be him confirming that his name is Robbie. Of course, his whole brand has been built on this anonymity and secrecy. And
how did it take 20 years for a clip on the BBC to come to light?
I know.
That's extraordinary. Well, there we go. Are you a fan of Banksy at home? I suspect lots of our audience are not. He's quite political, isn't he?
Very political.
I always suspected it was a big squad of people under the Banksy banner anyway, right? Rather than just one.
Well, it's Robbie Banks. That's who it seems
Robbie
to be.
Banks,
Thank you. Thank you both very much indeed. See you again in 45 minutes. We'll be turning to the local community of Shrewsbury, where those 4 boys, those 4 students who were killed in that car crash, are from, where they were doing their A-levels next.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you...
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with Israel.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camila Tomini Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, very good morning to you. The time is 8 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of November. You're tuned into Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. A weekend camping trip turned to tragedy in Wales as the bodies of 4 missing teenagers have been recovered from a car wreck. In just a moment, we'll be crossing to the community in Shrewsbury, who are today in mourning.
A breakthrough in the Middle East. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 4-day truce to swap Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners. We'll be crossing to Tel Aviv to get the latest on that deal.
Plus, the biggest tax cuts in 50 years. That's expected today as the Chancellor delivers his autumn budget statement. As the Conservatives pledge to get the economy back on track. We'll have the latest here on GB News with analysis and updates throughout the morning. Earlier, though, we spoke to Harriet Baldwin.
I think it is going to be a real turning point today in terms of the autumn statement, because if you cast your mind back to a year ago, inflation was running over 11%. Now we've got a backdrop of it having fallen to 4.6%. So that's a backdrop where Jeremy Hunt, who had to raise taxes last year, can look actually at giving some of that back to the hard-working people.
Well, I don't know if I can promise you any sunshine this week, but we can promise you the sunshine that is Annie Shuttleworth with your weather forecast.
Good morning. Well, there'll be some more autumnal sunshine out there today, but by the end of the week, we'll see signs of winter. Now, find out more with me later on.
Signs of winter. That means a frost, doesn't it? Let us know your thoughts this morning. Is it going to be a frosty statement? What are you looking for from the Chancellor? Send it in, gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GBNews.
Sad news to begin with this morning. 4 teenagers who disappeared on a weekend camping trip to Snowdonia have been found dead after their car was submerged in a river.
Well, a major search was launched after Jevon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Henderson and Hugo Morris all failed to return home from a weekend camping trip.
Police confirmed that their car left the road in Garreg near Tremadog, which is where the bodies were recovered.
The police say it appears to have been a tragic accident. The 4 boys, all students at Shrewsbury College, were studying for their A-levels. Well, our reporter, Will Hollis, is at Shrewsbury and Theo Giacomba is at Garreg, where those boys were found in Wales. I want to start with you, Will, if I can. This is every parent's worst nightmare. They raised the alarm after all 4 families didn't have any contact with the boys. Just give us a sense of the shock and the mood where you are.
Yes, well, it's a quiet morning here in Shrewsbury. Cars are going to work and students are starting to arrive at Shrewsbury College here on London Road. But it's going to be a college day quite unlike any other. It's a college day on Friday when those boys would have been finishing their A-levels. They would have been looking forward to a weekend away, a weekend that many young people would look forward to when they start to get to that age where they have a little bit more freedom. 16 years old, 17, 18 years old, going not too far away into North Wales, into Snowdonia, where they were going to be doing a little bit of camping. But it was on their return trip that they will never finish. We've had a little bit of an idea of how the college has responded, where all 4 of those teenage boys were studying their A-levels, 6th formers, and in a statement that was released late last night after the announcement of the bodies being recovered, said, "We would like to offer our deepest condolences to the family and friends of the 4 young men who tragically died in the suspected traffic accident. This news is truly heartbreaking, and our thoughts go out to those affected by this tragic news." They go on to thank thank the emergency services and the rescue teams that worked to locate the vehicle. But they finished the statement by saying, we will be working directly with students and staff who are affected by this terrible accident and have put in place a range of support measures for all of our community. Of course, it isn't just here at this particular part of Shrewsbury at the local college. It's also at places like the local church. Trinity Church is hosting a service at 9 o'clock, opening their doors for anybody who would like to come and have a bit of a moment, somber silence, maybe lay a few flowers. The local football team as well has offered their condolences. This is a town that is coming together today in a way that no town would like to, but has to because of the circumstances.
Okay, Will, thanks very much. Let's cross over to Wales, the scene of the accident. And Theo, a major search operation was launched for these boys, and there they were having a nice weekend up near Snowdonia, and it appears to have been a tragic road accident.
Yes, that's right. Well, there was an extensive search carried out by North Wales Police, and it was a tip-off yesterday morning that led the police to find this car, and they announced that around midday yesterday, and at 4:30 in the late afternoon they did confirm that the bodies of 4 young males were found following that extensive search for 4 missing teenagers, all of them between the ages of 16 and 18, as Will just mentioned a moment ago. They were doing their A-levels and had come to this area, into the national park, to have a weekend camping trip. Now, they were Jevon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Henderson and Hugo Morris, and this weekend was one where they would have come to this area and expected to return home. One of the parents, Harvey Owen's mother, confirmed that her son's phone was last used on Sunday afternoon, and of course the police went on to begin their search alongside several other agencies. Now, officers say they appear to have died in the car that they were travelling in what seems to have left the road on this main road just over my right shoulder, where the police were working yesterday. And in a statement they also said, I would ask the families of these boys are afforded privacy at this desperate time, and of course this has left the family and friends united in grief.
And Will, thank you both very much indeed for those updates. Better news from the Middle East for once. A major development there overnight. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 4-day truce in Gaza. The deal will see Hamas release 50 women and children hostages in exchange for 150 Palestinian women and those under 19 being held in Israeli jails. Well, in a late-night cabinet meeting, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the return of hostages was a sacred and top goal, whilst reiterating Israel will continue to seek a total victory. The deal was mediated by Qatar and Egypt and will also allow for hundreds of humanitarian, medical and fuel aid trucks to enter all parts of the Gaza Strip. Well, earlier we spoke to local journalist Yotam Confino for his update from Tel Aviv.
Within those 24 hours, Israelis who oppose the deal, for whatever reason they might have, they have a chance to file a petition with the Supreme Court. We know that there are some hostages, some families of hostages that have been opposed to a deal that doesn't include everyone. But of course, this is good news for most Israelis. A lot of Israelis were fearing that they would never see any of these hostages. So within 24 hours, it will be implemented, and then it will be a gradual release of the hostages. And Israel has apparently agreed that after this 4-day truce, it will accept to extend the ceasefire for an additional 24 hours for every 10 hostages that Hamas can release.
Tom Confino with that update for us. Now, it could be good news today as expectations are raised around tax cuts in the autumn statement. Millions of workers could be in line for a reduction in their national insurance contributions as the government are hard-pressed to offer a sweetener to voters ahead of the next election. Meanwhile, it was announced last night that the national living wage will increase by almost 10%. More than 2 million full-time workers are set to benefit from a pay rise there of more than £1,800 a year from next April. Well, let's look ahead to today's autumn statement with our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan. Good to see you, Liam, as always.
Morning.
This is going to be an autumn statement going for growth, and it feels like a final roll of the dice, frankly, from the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. Will it work?
It also feels, as we say in journalism, like a big reverse ferret. Just a few weeks ago, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister were saying it was impossible to cut taxes in this autumn statement. And now they're going sort of full Liz Truss. We're going for growth, we're going to cut taxes. We are the new shiny Conservative Party, putting clear blue water between us and Labour. Look, I think today's tax cuts are going to focus on business. I think that's going to be the way it happens. Business taxes in the autumn statement, some personal taxation, but more personal taxation in the spring budget nearer to a general election. And I think this change in business taxes will focus on something called full expensing. What does that mean? It sounds very complicated. All it means, Isabel, is that if you're a business and you invest in new equipment, in new technology, you can offset that investment cost against your corporation tax bill.
And I've heard some suggestions that this could just be a temporary tweak, in which case businesses will sort of probably bring some of their spending forward, but it won't necessarily mean a long-term gain for the economy. So this would be hugely significant, possibly the best move that the government's made if they made it permanent. Would that be a fair assessment?
Potentially. So they introduced full expensing back in April for 3 years, lasting until 2026. I think there'll be some kind of extension to 2028 or 2030. They may even make it permanent, but the Treasury officials would say that that would cost a huge amount of money. I think on the personal taxation side, we might see a change in national insurance or even the headline rate of income tax. Or if not the headline rate of income tax, maybe they'll unfreeze those tax thresholds. Again, that sounds tremendously complicated. All that means is the rate at which you start paying tax is currently £12,570. If they raise that, it would take more people out of taxation and it would be a boost to the incomes of the lower paid. So that may happen as well.
I suppose, you know, the analysis in all of this is whether or not this is going to work, you know, at the ballot box. You say that this is a big change for the government. You understand why. We saw when Trussonomics was brought in, the reaction of the markets. There's obviously been lots of ground preparing this time. So could it be more successful, or is there a bit of a risk to this as well? Because the Governor of the Bank of England yesterday saying, I'm still very concerned about inflation.
Yeah, the Governor of the Bank of England was saying to financial markets, don't think that interest rates are definitely going to come down, because financial markets are betting that the next move in interest rates will be down from 5.25%. That should happen by the middle of next year. But it's the job of the Governor of the Bank of England to say to the markets, look, don't get too excited. We still may raise interest rates. I think in terms of will it work, Sunak's a different kind of politician to Liz Truss. He has prepared the ground. He is using the Office for Budget Responsibility, where Liz Truss wanted to thumb her nose at the Office for Budget Responsibility because she thought they were sort of systematically too pessimistic. And I think Sunak's just seen as a kind of less volatile character. In these set pieces in politics, a lot of it is not about content, it's about tone, and they'll be trying to hit a more responsible tone. But look, let's be completely clear, there is a risk. The British government spending 10% of all tax revenue on interest payments to service our massive debts. And of course, a tax cut in the first instance, it may lead to more growth, it may lead to more revenue in the end, but in the first instance, it's going to cost money, and the financial markets are going to have to bear that cost. And if they take umbrage, then politicians will have to do another reverse ferret.
Gosh, what keeps us busy anyway.
Certainly does.
Liam, thank you very much for your analysis.
OK, let's now turn to Olivia Utley. She's in Westminster. Olivia, good morning to you. What have you got to say on this?
Good morning. Yeah, I mean, as Liam was saying, there's supposed to be what we're all expecting is a big cut in business tax rates so that businesses are able to claim back any money that they invest. Now, the Conservative MPs that I've spoken to are delighted about that. As the Telegraph has splashed, it's the biggest business tax cut in 50 years. The problem is with personal taxation. Now, Jeremy Hunt has raised expectations left, right and centre on this. Pretty much every single tax, personal tax, has been rumoured to be cut. We've talked about inheritance tax, we've talked about stamp duty, we've talked about income tax, national insurance, etc. What we seem to be cautiously expecting today, it's always not a very good idea to speak out just before a budget, but what we're cautiously expecting is a cut in national insurance. Now, that would affect about 28 million people. It'll save the average person about £400 a year. It's certainly welcome. But what Conservative MPs on the right of the party have pointed out to me is that unless those income tax thresholds are unfrozen, and Liam explained what that means there, basically what's happened because of the rate of inflation, all sorts of ordinary people, sort of teachers, nurses, people who you would imagine on a kind of middle income, have been pulled into the higher rate of income tax. Unless that higher rate of income tax threshold is moved up, then people will still be worse off than they would have been a couple of years ago, even with this cut in national insurance tax. So plenty on the right of the party are a little bit worried about how cautious Jeremy Hunt seems to be being about cutting essentially cutting income tax for ordinary people. Meanwhile, I've spoken to a few Labour MPs who are a bit concerned that they believe that the headroom that Jeremy Hunt has found, that why he's suddenly able to cut everyone's taxes, having said just 6 months ago that it would be completely impossible, is that he is planning to cut down on public spending in the years to come. And, you know, Jill Rutter, a think tanker, has said in the Times today that she thinks that the money put aside for public spending is now just ludicrously small, essentially. So there are those on the left of the party who are worried. There are those on the right of the party who are worried. It's not set to be a particularly easy day for the Chancellor.
You say, Olivia, we can talk about this till the cows come home. What does it mean to real people in the real world? We now go to Stockport. Sophie Reaper there this morning. You're in a little coffee shop called Coffee Fix, Sophie, and you're talking to folk there. Let's find out what they want, what they expect, what they dare to hope for in this announcement today, Sophie.
Well, a very good morning to you both. You're absolutely right, Eamonn. We're here at Coffee Fix in Stockport this morning. It's a town where families have been feeling the pinch as a result of the cost of living crisis, and I'm sure many of them will be paying close attention to what the Chancellor has to say later on today. So joining us now is one mum from the local area, Nicole. Very good morning to you, Nicole. Now, I know you are self-employed and that you've had to look for additional employment to supplement your income. We heard last night that the national living wage is going to be increasing to £11.44. Do you think that's doing enough for families?
Yes and no. So it takes it up slightly, which is nice, to around a £23,000 a year salary. But actually, who's taking the hit on that? So it's great saying, yes, OK, let's increase the salaries, the hourly rate for the parents, if I say that because that's the real place I live in parents, for the employee, but actually who's then got to supplement this? So you get small businesses that have then got to find this money in their pocket to pay this out as well. So they then have to increase their prices of things, and therefore the employee or the people that are actually working, they are the ones that then still have to pay these increased costs. So yes and no, it does help. But actually I think there's more that can be done to make a bigger impact rather than just keep upping the prices. The inflation needs to come down. It's OK, I don't know, for me, yeah, OK, up the salaries, but actually we need to look at the bigger picture and say the problem is much wider than just what the hourly rate is.
Obviously, we're coming into December next week. It's quite a scary thought that we're in December as of next week. But a lot of families, not just in Stockport, not just in Greater Manchester, but all over the UK, will be starting to think about money, especially at this time of year. What do you think could be said today that would put their minds at ease?
Honestly, I don't think a huge amount. I think if they turned around and said, actually, do you know what, we're going to change the way that we look at the work culture for people, improve the salaries. If we could look at trying to bring some costings down for people in the shops, which would make a huge impact. Maybe even, I don't know, for people that have got these ridiculously high mortgages because these interest rates are just going through the roof. If there was something that they could do to bring that pressure down on people, that could make such an impact. Even if it saved people a few £100s over a Christmas period, that's a big difference in a time when every single penny is counting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. There you go. Here in Stockport, it's a really big issue, and we're going to be here today talking to families and mums about exactly what Jeremy Hunt could say today to have an impact on them.
See, anyone who says mums aren't switched on, I tell you what, that just proves, doesn't it, exactly, mums know what's going on.
Well, Sophie's saying what Jeremy Hunt could say. He could say it's all amazeballs today. He could say that.
He could. Unlikely, but he could.
You know, he's not a man that you would look at and say amazeballs.
I have been known to say amazeballs in my own spare time.
Well, you know, we worked with someone here who constantly used the term amazeballs, which really...
Awesome sauce.
Awesome sauce and amazeballs, which really annoyed me. But anyway, this is... millennials like these sort of words, but people... 1 in 3 people rate amazeballs as the word most likely to leave them seeing red. Oh. Right? Next beside that is another stupid word. Here's
I use this one as well.
Hollybobs.
I'm off on my hollybobs.
Well, why do you think you're like 15 or something?
No, they just totally capture what I'm trying to say, which is excitement. It's not enough to say I'm off on my holiday. My hollybobs. It's just joy.
Right, so when you sit down to great food, here's one.
Yumski.
No, nom, nom, nom.
Nom, 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 nom. Nom, 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 nom. Yeah.
Oh. Din-dins. I could say that. I've said that since a kid. Is my din-din ready?
Do you still say that? Is my din-din ready?
Well, yeah, it's funny. That's
Let me see this list. I want to see some more of them.
That's not a new one. Din-dins.
No problem. Oh, God, I literally say all of these. Nookie. You've definitely said nookie in the past.
Why would I even
favourites.
refer to such a word? Where is that word?
Number 14, no less.
Amorous exchange. Nookie is an amorous exchange.
Bossing it. Wine o'clock. This is like I wrote this. My bad. Sorry, not sorry. Wifey. I say all of these. Oh, you like number 11 as well. If anyone's got a copy of the Mail.
Why would I like number 11?
Yeah, just, you know, I've known you many years, Eamonn.
The word for saucy behaviour that people don't like using is hanky-panky.
That's a you word. That's a you phrase, along with...
Well, it avoids saying, like, I mean, you know, you can say words like nookie to avoid saying sex.
You usually say nookie. It's like you can't say it once because it's a bit... You have to say it twice really quickly.
Anyway, those are just words, 25 words printed in the Mail today that we detest.
I like them.
OK. The COVID inquiry goes on and on.
COVID's on my list of words I detest. Don't you just wish we could erase the whole thing?
Well, it's coming back again. So many people, how many people have been in touch saying, I've got COVID, I've tested positive for COVID again. The inquiry continues again today. The former Deputy Chief Medical Officer for England, Professor Jonathan Van Tam, he will give evidence. That's going to be at 10 o'clock this morning.
Well, let's check in with our reporter Ray Addison, who joins us from outside the COVID inquiry in West London. Good morning to you, Ray. JVT became famous, didn't he, for his football analogies. He got a bit of a kind of cult following in a bleak time. People liked him. I wonder if he's going to be box office in that way today. It's been pretty...
His football analogies were stupid. He would say things like, how often have the team been 3-0 up and lost 4-3? Professor, I would tell you, very rarely was the answer to that one. And someone should have pointed that out. When did you ever hear a team being 3-0 up and losing 4-3?
I don't remember that particular analogy.
Ray, can you add to that? Can you add to that at all?
No, I'm not sure. I'm wondering if we may end up hearing some more football analogies later on today. As you were saying, he's going to be on from 10 a.m. Before him, though, because we've got a very busy day. We've got 3 witnesses today here at the COVID inquiry. We are going to be hearing more evidence from Professor Sir Chris Whitty. Of course, he is the Chief Medical Officer for England. That starts at 9:30. They've actually started the day earlier so they can get that extra evidence from the Professor. Of course, yesterday we heard how he described the government's pandemic plans as woefully deficient before COVID and then chaotic afterwards. He also accused the government of simply not being electrified by COVID as much as it might have been by something, say, a warning from MI5 of a terrorist attack on a similar scale. He also refused to be drawn into personal criticisms of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson as well. He said the way that he made decisions was unique and said that he actually performed best in small groups, because that was when he was most focused on the science, particularly just before those COVID briefings that he gave. He also took the opportunity to defend his own decisions during the pandemic. He denied accusations from Sir Patrick Vallance, the former chief scientific advisor, that he'd actually been a delayer over lockdowns. He said that he was more cautious than some people. However, he was trying to balance the societal impact on the public of locking down early versus the medical impact of going too late, although he does say that in hindsight those lockdowns did start too late. Then, as you were saying, from 10 a.m. he will be followed by Professor Sir Jonathan Van Tam, his former deputy, and JVT had been calling during the pandemic for the professor to raise the alarm over COVID across government much earlier than he did. So it'll be interesting to see if he continues down that track. However, the professor was saying that he felt that waiting a few more days to get more data was actually the right approach. Then in the afternoon, we're going to be hearing from Professor Dame Angela McLean. She's the government chief scientific advisor. At the time of the pandemic, she was advisor to the Ministry of Defence. And we heard earlier in this inquiry that in a WhatsApp message to another scientist, she dubbed Rishi Sunak Dr. Death. That was in the weeks following the 2020 Eat Out to Help Out scheme. So three more experts giving their testimony today, and it will be very interesting to see particularly what Professor Sir Jonathan Van Tam has to say following those comments by his former boss.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. I don't know why we link via satellite to Ray, because we could basically open the window and talk to him. That inquiry just takes place across the road.
I saw Pip there yesterday. Hi, Pip. Open the front door. There she is.
Yeah.
Giving our location away now. Anyway, we don't know where Annie Shuttleworth is, but it's somewhere that's bringing us sunshine. Let's check in with her with the forecast.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It'll be a cloudier day for many of us. There'll be some rain in the north, but there'll still be some sunshine on offer across southern areas. So we've got off to a slightly cloudier, damper start across parts of Scotland, northern England as well. That rain will persist, particularly in the north, but it will dry up across the Pennines. We'll also see plenty of dry weather across the bulk of England and Wales. Some sunshine developing by this afternoon once again. So a similar feel to yesterday by later on this afternoon. Highs of around 12 degrees. It'll also be as high as around 14 degrees across eastern areas of Scotland, despite the rain and cloud here. Then through this evening, it stays fairly cloudy across the board. The rain will start to pep up, though, across the far north of Scotland as that front starts to finally make its progress southwards. So particularly across the Shetland Isles, it's going to turn quite blustery and wintry up there. Across the south, though, staying cloudy, a little bit murkier than last night, with only lows of around 11 degrees for some towns and cities down here. So a milder start tomorrow. And the rain will then shift throughout Thursday further south, with that colder air becoming more widespread as we head into Friday from the north. So we've got some wintry showers starting to fall across the hills of Scotland, and we could see some overnight frosts over the weekend in southern areas. But on Thursday, highs will be around average of 12 degrees.
Winter is coming.
There's a new president in Argentina who looks a bit like...
Well, do you know, I heard some of him describe him as, or is this a bit cheeky?
What?
I had someone describe him in his looks as a cross between Michael Fabricant and Ian Hunt. He's behind bars.
Ian Hunt?
Is that the name of the killer?
Huntley?
Oh, Huntley, Ian Huntley.
Right, oh, right, oh, dear.
Anyway, that's a combo. He's there with a chainsaw in the sun.
He looks like Robin Williams, really. He looks a bit like, the Star saying he looks like Bernard Manning.
Or he always looks like the lead singer from Supergrass.
Oh, yes.
In the 90s.
No,
this is a fun segment.
Meatloaf, you mean?
No, Supergrass. I can't remember his name, but he's quite big teeth. Anyway, who do you think Javier Milei looks like?
Well, it doesn't matter who he looks like. What he wants to do is to reclaim the Falklands for Argentina. What do you think on that one? I know a lot of you are ex-forces who watch. Maybe you served in the Falklands. Let us know what you think, if it was all in vain, and why is it so important that this guy gets the Falklands back again. That's next.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with Israel.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Akua, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's on your teeth.
It's on your teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this?
Are you rethinking this policy?
Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camila Tomini Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Michael Dyson.
Wait a minute.
Go on then.
Before you go into where we said we were big build-up about talking about Argentina and whatever it is, but our guest in Argentina hasn't turned up.
Well, I was going to fill that gap by talking about Nigel Farage's bottom again. I'm not fixated on this. So we've had lots of messages in about this.
Well, it seems a shame not to show pictures of Nigel Farage's bottom.
It does seem a shame. Maybe we can sort that out for later on in the programme. Michael Dyson, which is an interesting shout from him. He's called for Farage to win Rear of the Year. This is after he was filmed on a long lens, showering in the now famous I'm a Celebrity jungle shower last night. And there's been lots of chat about it. And in fact, I think Lorraine Kelly of ITV has been accused of body shaming because she was talking about his bottom in a negative way, which might be awkward next time they bump into each other.
You've redressed the balance.
I haven't expressed an opinion. I've said it was fine.
So anyway, that's Nigel's bottom dealt with, yes?
Yeah,
right.
Be happy to move on.
Very good.
There have been a few more emails, mostly
he'll only win that if you don't enter Paul. That's
true. Strong competition
But
from
they still do Rear of the Year.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
I have a number of friends who have won it.
Really?
Carol Vorderman being one.
Isabel not being one of them. But that's a whole other story. That's a
My heart.
I'm only mocking.
I'd like to not express an opinion as well.
Yeah, I think
in this
stay neutral,
situation,
be Switzerland in this situation.
You have a very good rear.
All right, moving on.
Because they're your big ones. You've got the rear of the year, and your other one is the pipe smoker of the year. Do they still do the pipe smoker of the year?
Pop that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah, stick that in your pipe and smoke it. There you go. I don't know whether they still do that.
Don't think so.
Nigel could do the double, I imagine.
Oh, he could at the same time.
Yeah. I can just imagine.
Wales, no, okay.
Yes, sir.
It was not good in the Euro qualifiers last night. The results had to go. It was very complicated. Anyway, they drew 1-1 with Turkey.
They did indeed.
But they didn't get automatic qualification. However, all is not lost.
All is not lost because now we get into the playoff situation, which is how they then got into the World Cup finals last time. So I will try and explain this as, I'll always make it sound more complicated than it really is.
But it is complicated.
Well, they need to play now they will play either Finland or Iceland or Ukraine. So they've got to get through that.
That's a one-off, is it?
That is it. Well, no, they've got to get through that, and that's a semi-final.
Yeah, but it's not two legs.
Germany. It's one-off. It is a one-off, yeah.
Right.
And then the potential final would be against either Poland or Estonia. So certainly winnable games. But Wales just haven't done as well. They played really well last night, but before that against Armenia, they haven't been. So anyway,
they're just going to have to play really well again.
They still have a good chance. And then the draw for the actual finals themselves is on December the 2nd at 5 p.m, and that's when you have the 5 different pots, and England will be in pot number 1 with all the main seeds, which will be Germany, France, Spain, Belgium, and also Portugal as well.
So these playoffs for Wales, when are they going to happen? They're not going to happen before the draw is made, are they?
The draw for the actual playoffs happens tomorrow.
Yeah.
This is how. But the thing is, the way they fall, you don't really have to make the draw. There's only the odd bit that they have to change.
OK, my friend.
Am I making it sound
Have you anything interesting to tell us?
You know what? I could actually go through everybody that is in the draw. But that really would send you to sleep by the time I got to pot 3.
You saved that. I had a friend who sent me a podcast yesterday. I don't listen much to the podcast too often, But anyway, I put it on. It was supposed to grow my mind and whatever.
Right.
I was asleep within 3 minutes.
Well, what was it about?
I don't know.
So you don't even know what it was about?
No, it was...
So what, do you lay down and listen to it? That's probably not the perfect podcasting opportunity.
It's all these things that, how to lead a better life and how you can... And I think I do all these things anyway.
Well, that if you played that and you fell asleep, that will have gone in.
That's correct. That's correct.
And now you can be living your best life.
Because they say with exams and if you're trying to learn something...
just record.
You lay there and then you fall asleep and then, strangely...
You just know it.
It's there.
I only ever revised for exams last minute.
Well, same here.
It's the only way I could have retained the knowledge.
Is that why you and I did so badly?
Speak
for yourself, mister. Speak for yourself, mister.
A-star student, I'll have you know, apart from maths.
Apart from maths, and then I forget it all then after that.
But the thing is, though, let me ask you this. With football, and I'm terrible, I can tell you stuff, this is sound like a middle-aged guy speaking, games from the years ago when I was a kid, and then my son will say, "Oh, Dad, the Spurs game," so and I go, "I was there, I was involved in the whole thing," and I go, "I can't remember any of it."
Yeah, and that's
the
recent game. You can't remember the recent game.
Is that age, or maybe it's just us getting up in the middle of the night? I mean, people say, "How was the show this morning?" And I can't remember by the end.
What guests were on the show? And you'll go, "I can't remember."
I know, but that's because we have 17 or 18 guests a day.
Do you
remember every detail?
Yes.
And fantastic, yes. But anyway, we've got to go to the headline makers very shortly. So
really? I feel as if I'm only just warming up.
Thank you for filling in for the Argentinian man who didn't turn up.
On that note, loads of emails. Shall I read some of those?
Yes.
Things we didn't get to the guest. Lots of you enraged by this new president of Argentina. And they were saying, can you please get a historian on to tell you that Argentina can't reclaim the Falklands because they never had them in the first place? Or is that too expensive? Just look it up on Wikipedia. That just gives you a sense of how irritated. This one, Peter Leonard. I served in the Falklands conflict. The population is British. We liberated them with the cost of 255 British lives. They had a referendum. They voted 97% to remain British. How can Argentina lay claim to them? We must always look after them. And that's pretty much the sentiment of the inbox this morning.
OK, and thank you, folks, for getting in touch and expressing those views. We will be going through some of the most annoying phrases. We mentioned the 25 words that we detest the most. We'll be recapping on those. It'll be absolutely amazeballs.
And after that, it'll be 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with Israel.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camila Tomini Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Stories that make the news, and joining us to go through those today, we've got Andy Jones and we have got Anna Mikalova with their views on things. And Andy, we're going to start, Andy, with these words that there's been a survey about the 25 words and phrases that annoy people the most. What would you like to say about some of those?
Oh, well, I'd say it's totes amazeballs, indeed. We've all got words that we hate. We've all got words that we hear that make us cringe. I want to talk, I know you talked a little bit about this earlier, but a survey of 2,000-odd people said that various words that we absolutely hate. Amazeballs came top. Hollybobs, awesomeness, bants. Bants is one I hear a lot in the pub. We sort of use it ironically now rather than in its original intended. Din-dins is one that makes me feel a little bit sick.
I quite like din-dins. Thank you.
Still have my din-dins.
The one I like, the one that I hate most, which is actually the one people are sort of less concerned about, is my bad. I find that very annoying.
What does it even mean?
It's my fault.
Yeah, my bad.
Mea culpa.
Is it American?
A lot of these are American, but I totted up out of 25 how many, not only that I don't dislike, but actually that I regularly use. And I am guilty of 18.
18?
Out of 25.
You see, I've never understood...
I'm down with the kids. That was one, funnily enough, that I'm not, you know, being a heterosexual female.
I can't
it's not
believe
really
it.
top of my lexicon.
All the time.
What confused me also, no offence but has made it in, but surely that's just being British.
No offence is all right, isn't it?
No offence but.
No offence but is different to no offence.
When did Christmas become crimbo? I've never really understood. I've never really got that one.
I imagine a lot of these are written in text because they're shorter,
Yes,
but I don't
exactly.
actually say crimbo out loud. Right? It's not actually harder to say than Christmas. If you're interested in the science behind this...
Yes, I am.
Neuroscientist Dr Rachel Taylor says when we hear a word that we do not like, what goes on in our brain? She's discussing this for us. Our primitive brain cannot distinguish between a physical or psychological threat, and when it hears a word it doesn't like, our brains actually get smaller, and any awkward behaviour from others can trigger a threat response. Ooh. So when you hear someone say a word that you don't like and you go, ooh, like that, it's actually because you feel a small amount of threat on a micro
Interesting. Well,
level.
I suffer from that, but not in this context. I suffer from it when people use grammar incorrectly or the wrong words. People using lay down all the time makes, you know, the only time you lay down is, well, lay the table or lay an egg, but otherwise, please stop talking about laying down. I can't bear it. And it's just funny, isn't it, certain things, but it's a physical, chemical threat reaction.
You should have a lie down if you're that upset.
Thank you. A lie down is correct.
Well, Isabel and I tend to send each other an awful lot of text messages, not because we want to, because we both got this brain, which when you type a text message and then predictive text takes over and changes for to fur or off to if. So then it goes, obviously I meant off there, not if. Yeah. And then she'll come back to me, did it with something else. And that's very irritating.
We always have to correct the error because we're mortified if anyone thinks that we can't spell.
Or there's no punctuation, there's no question marks on something or whatever, but there we are. But drinkies is something. Drinkies?
I love to go for drinkies. I love wine o'clock. I love bands.
Which means time for a tipple. Right, OK. Brad Pitt. Anna, right. Brad Pitt isn't...
Sorry.
I read this story and one of his adopted sons has basically... He's been caught on text, if caught is the right word, calling his father, his adoptive father, a despicable person. And the thing that quite really frightened me about this one is that he said he made his 4 youngest children tremble in fear.
Yes, it's horrible, and to be honest, reading it as well. So this has all come out of an Instagram post posted by Pax, one of their children, in 2020. So suddenly it's come out now. I think it was a private post that has been picked up, and. Reading it, I mean, anyone who knows about people with custody battles, divorce, it's so messy, it's so horrible that it does feel invasive just reading this because he's saying these things. He's calling him despicable. He's calling him a world-class a-hole. He's saying that, as you say, that he made his other kids tremble in fear. Brad Pitt's side has come out and said these are all smears. I mean, they are in the middle of a very, very messy battle, and just reading it just feels sort of very invasive, actually.
Tragic, really.
Tragic.
All of it.
Very sad for the kids.
We might be able to come back to you both, Anna Mikhailova and Andy Jones, but we're going to just pause and dip into an interview now with the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, who's joining us on this important day. We've got the autumn statement coming up. Look, from what we've had briefed out by government so far, feels like they're really trying to set out some clear blue water away from you in the Labour Party, and I suppose some could say they've set a bit of a trap for you, haven't they?
Good morning. I can't see any traps that they've successfully laid for the Labour Party because, quite frankly, after 13 years of Conservative failure in government on every measure on the economic dashboard for our country, whether inflation and the cost of living, the amount of tax people are paying, the amount of debt the country's in, the quality of our public services, and whether people at home feel better off after the last 13 years under the Tories or not, it's just red lights across the dashboard. It's 13 years of failure, and the budget today is not going to be able to do anywhere near enough to turn that around.
About a trap, I'm talking about making these tax cuts. Whether or not we can afford it, I suppose, is debatable. But if you, as the polls seem to suggest, end up winning at the next election, you'll be the ones that have to balance the books and potentially reverse some of these changes.
Well, we in the Labour Party have been saying for some time that we want to see tax come down on working people because, on average, families are paying £4,000 more in tax each year under the Conservatives. And we therefore would welcome what's been leaked as a cut in national insurance today. That would be a couple of £100 a year on average for most people. That's welcome. But if you're paying £4,000 a year more in tax under the Tories and you get a couple of £100 back, you don't need to be a genius to figure out that you're still, quite worse off. And people at home will be saying, well, if I'm paying more tax than ever before, even after the tax cuts announced today, what am I getting for that money when all of our public services are on their knees and the country's heading in the wrong direction?
It's interesting. I was just reading that if Rishi Sunak and indeed with Jeremy Hunt's help today can claw back just 6 points, they could actually stop the Labour Party from getting a majority at the next election. And it certainly feels as though they are throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at this. It's got to be taken seriously by you. Do you think that you might be losing those 6 points?
We take every election seriously, and the Labour Party has changed under Keir Starmer and my boss Rachel Reeves, and we've all been very, very clear that our plans for the country will be built on a bedrock of fiscal responsibility, making sure that all of our policies are fully costed and that they deliver for the British people. We're very confident about taking the Change Labour Party and offer that we have to the British people at the next election. We would rather that happen sooner rather than later because of the ongoing damage the Conservatives are inflicting on our economy and our public services. But look, the Conservatives are not just going to hand over power, they're going to fight for the next election, and we're willing to take them on the basis of their 13 years of failure running the country.
Well, perhaps we'll check in with you once we've got the full details of that autumn statement, which is happening at 12:30 today. But for now, Darren Jones, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
In studio, we're back with Anna Mikulova and Andy Jones, and they're going through some of the stories in the papers. Andy, Princess Eugenie, she's revealed having difficulties with her appearance because of being in the public eye and scrutiny, something which her mother suffered from. Terrible judgment.
Yeah, I'll talk about Princess Eugenie in a moment. This is really relevant at the moment because there's been a survey release, details of an NHS study, an official study into mental health into young people. 1 in 8 older teenagers, aged 17 to 19 girls, suffer from eating disorders, bulimia, anorexia, binge eating, which is actually up 15 times since the start of the pandemic, which is an absolutely incredible statistic, I think. Young girls, we know there are huge problems with exposure to social media, exposure to programmes, talking about body size, body weight, perfect shape, huge growth in plastic surgery, Brazilian bum lifts, etc., and all this sort of stuff. And the NHS has announced they're treating 700,000 people every year for this kind of illness. And Princess Eugenie, timely enough, has said that she has had issues herself around food. The 33-year-old talks about that she's definitely had issues around food in terms of her relationships with it, in terms of having to look a certain way, and she always thinks that's not a nice outfit or she looked terrible there. Different people saying off-the-cuff remarks on TV shows and social media. Gets back to her, it's giving her definite issues about her body, and she was talking about this on a podcast. She says that that's just life in the public eye, but it's also interesting that she and her husband, Jack, now live in Portugal with their 2 sons. So you'd think it's probably played a little bit of their choice to move away.
I always find it sad when a beautiful woman like Princess Eugenie has issues. I really wish that beautiful women knew they were beautiful. You are beautiful, Princess Eugenie. It's such a shame that she's got body issues. I suppose anyone standing next to Princess of Wales is going to have issues. She's just like a supermodel, isn't she? Just like standing there like a, what would you call it, a clothing hanger. Anything looks good on her.
Also, if you've been filmed all the time, there's always a bad angle. There's always a horrible photo.
Well, not for some, but I wouldn't want to have to stand up next to her. But no, that's a shame. I find that sad.
OK, where we go now?
Where do you want to go? Should we go to Borneo? It's 5-week-old. Blackpool Zoo has got a little baby, a Bornean orangutan baby.
Called, what is it called?
Is it called?
Jarang.
Joanne.
Jarang, which means rare.
Oh, right.
So it's a 6-month-old baby orangutan. It was born in June in Blackpool Zoo. If anyone's interested, Blackpool Zoo website, I can report, has a lot of nice detail about this orangutan and their general family of orangutans. This is the first baby orangutan born in Blackpool Zoo for 20 years.
I didn't know Blackpool had a zoo. I know there was Chester Zoo up there.
Chester Zoo just has great PR, so Chester Zoo...
Everyone knows about
exactly.
Chester Zoo.
We need to talk more about Blackpool Zoo.
Uh-huh.
But I love this photo because it just shows... He's like a newborn baby. I mean, he really does look human, or we look like them. I don't know which one, but he's very, very cute.
I think we share something like 97% of our DNA with orangutans. They are our closest cousins, so it's not surprising.
They're very smart.
Seen them in the wild in Borneo, and, you know, probably in my lifetime that won't happen for much longer. But it is always a joy, because, you know, we were discussing zoos and whether or not they're moral these days, really, having these animals in captivity. But I think for an animal that is endangered, like an orangutan, anything, any new birth...
Also, it helps spread the word. Something like this, you know, hopefully some people will go off the back of this, give some money, understand that it's endangered.
Yeah. Do we have a close-up picture of the little orangutan here, which is... Not
Duran. So there's 100,000 left in the wild, it says. So
is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you can actually... There's nicer pictures in the papers and things, but it is... it's so human-like, Isabel, as you were saying there.
97% the same
but
DNA.
You look at that and you say, it has to be an absolute crime to harm something like that in the wild, to execute it, to hunt it, to...
Well, it's the habitat that gets destroyed for palm oil, mainly, in Borneo, anyway. And actually what happens is the adults are often killed and the little orphans are left, and where they can be, they are preserved. But, as you say, only 100,000 left in the wild.
Yeah.
Really sad. But anyway, we're delighted about Duran.
Durang. You think they'd give it a catchier name? Orangutan's quite good.
Or Duran. Anyway, on that note, we say thank you to Anna Mikhailova and Andy Jones for taking us through Headline Makers today. We've got lots more coming for you here on the programme in the last half an hour. And we're going to be going right across the country. It is a big day in Westminster, but we're getting out and about, finding out what this autumn statement will mean for you. That will be live at 12:30, but we'll have more coverage, analysis and updates in the next little while.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with Israel.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only three people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Akua, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camila Tomini Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, very good morning. Very nice to see you with the time at exactly 9 o'clock on this Wednesday, the 22nd of November.
You're tuned in to Breakfast with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel, Webster, and here's what's leading the news this morning.
A weekend camping trip turned to tragedy in Wales as the bodies of 4 missing teenagers have been recovered from a crashed car.
A positive breakthrough in the Middle East. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 4-day truce to swap Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners. Earlier, we spoke to local journalist Yotam Confino in Tel Aviv.
So within 24 hours, it will be implemented, and then it will be a gradual release of the hostages. And Israel has apparently agreed that after this 4-day truce, it will accept to extend the ceasefire for an additional 24 hours for every 10 hostages that Hamas can release.
What sort of fiscal package has Jeremy Hunt tidied up for us today? Well, we'll find out just before lunchtime as the Chancellor delivers his autumn budget statement. And the Conservatives pledging to get the economy back on track. Here's the chair of the Treasury Committee, Harriet Baldwin.
I think it is going to be a real turning point today in terms of the autumn statement, because if you cast your mind back to a year ago, inflation was running over 11%. Now we've got a backdrop of it having fallen to 4.6%. So that's a backdrop where Jeremy Hunt, who had to raise taxes last year, can look actually at giving some of that back to the hardworking people.
Any sunshine on the way? Annie Shuttleworth has your forecast.
Good morning. Well, there'll be some more autumnal sunshine out there today, but by the end of the week, we'll see signs of winter. Now, find out more with me later on.
Annie, thank you very much indeed. Your views welcome. gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet at GB News.
Right, we have a very busy news day ahead of us, and the question is this morning, will it be a good news day? Lots of expectations swirling around tax cuts in today's autumn statement.
Well, millions of you could be in line for a reduction in your national insurance contributions. The government is hard-pressed to offer a sweetener to voters ahead of the next election, and that may well be one of them.
One of the measures that have been announced so far is that the national living wage will increase by almost 10%. More than 2 million full-time workers over 21 are set to benefit from the pay rise of more than £1,800 a year. That's from next April.
So joining us now to look ahead to today's budget statement, our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan. Liam, what have you got to say?
I think the thrust of today's autumn statement, and there will be tax cuts, even though just a few weeks ago tax cuts were impossible, according to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. I think the thrust of today's statement will be on business taxation. So if a business wants to invest money, it can offset a lot of that investment against its corporation tax bill. That will help a lot of big businesses, but small businesses, they may not have the financial firepower to fund that investment, to take advantage of that tax break. So I think that will be the most important thing. But what will really catch the headlines will be the changes to personal taxation. I think we could see some kind of alteration in national insurance. Now, national insurance, a lot of people don't really sort of understand what it is. It's like income tax with a different name. It's levied at 12% between about 12.5 grand earnings and up to 50 grand. Now, the Chancellor could either lower that rate by 1%, and that would impact 28 million people. That would be like 300 or 400 quid a year for 28 million people working. Or he could alter the threshold. So he raises the threshold at which in national insurance starts to be paid from about 12.5 grand. That's something I've personally been arguing for quite a few months.
Interesting that he's decided to go for that, because we've had some comments from viewers this morning. He seemed, by the way, really across all of the details on this. People really care about the autumn statement and saying, why isn't he unfreezing the personal tax bans? Because at the moment, if he does any tweak to national insurance, he's still bringing all these people who shouldn't be in the higher tax bands, taking extra cash on them and going, OK, well, you can have 1% off your national insurance. How about you just don't do either?
This is the ultimate stealth tax. When you freeze the tax thresholds, so more and more people get dragged into paying income tax, or they get dragged into higher tax brackets. You've got middle-ranking nurses, teachers, police officers. Now they're top tax rate payers. They shouldn't be. They're not particularly wealthy people. And that's how the Chancellor's managed to raise tens of billions of extra pounds without altering the headline rate of tax. Politicians think people are and journalists, by the way, often think people are too thick to understand what's happening. In my experience, people understand exactly what's happening. And that's why a lot of people on the right of the Conservative Party, they think the stealth tax, these freezing of tax bans is very unconservative, and they want them unfrozen. And that's why I suspect he may go for unfreezing the threshold at which national insurance kicks in, rather than altering the headline rate. He could wait until the budget in April, which is likely to be near a general election, before he does something that's really eye-catching, like changing the headline rate.
From the money aspect, from the economics aspect, let's now turn to Christopher Hope for the political aspect of all of this. Christopher Hope's in Westminster. Liam raised a very interesting point, Christopher, which I really just don't understand. How do I put this? Right, so just a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, whatever, both Sunak and Hunt are saying, oh, there's no money, there's no room for tax breaks, you shouldn't be looking towards that sort of thing. And then suddenly all of this we believe will happen today, and I'm pretty sure you're pretty sure that it'll happen too. Why don't they just say, let's wait and see, but it's looking pretty good? Why can't they just say that?
It's politics, Eamonn, isn't it? They're behind in the polls, 20 points behind. That lead for Labour hasn't budged in the year since the PM, Mr Sunak, became Prime Minister, became Tory leader. They've got to do something. Now there's been some headroom created by the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility. I've been talking to allies of Liz Truss, because this is kind of what Liam's describing there, the 100 or so measures to get the economy growing, to be unveiled today. Maybe the cuts in national insurance, allowing for full expensing, to allow to offset all your tax bills against investing in kit for manufacturers. All this stuff is really, is political and important, and what Liz Truss tried to do a year ago in quite a rush. The difference now is this OBR, this Office for Budget Responsibility, says there is some headroom to do so. So they're trying to do it. But I think, inflation has come down by more than 2% in the past month, and that's given them a window to move, because they are so far behind the polls. They've got to do something. The problem is, are they risking inflation going up if they get this wrong?
Behind in the polls. I have seen some commentary this morning saying that if the PM and Hunt can just claw back 6 points with this last throw of the dice, then they could actually stop Labour from getting a majority. Now, it's not winning, but it is making a significant development. You're very sceptical about that.
Yeah. Well, it does sound quite desperate, Isabel. If they're 20 points behind and get back only 14 points behind. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, said at the weekend that there's around 20% of voters are undecided about the Tory party, and the Tories tell me that's why they've lost those succession of by-elections earlier this year, because voters who normally back them have sat on their hands. Now, if they can pull back some of those 20%, they can get back towards a single-digit lead for the Labour Party, or I expect that to be sometime next year. So I think there could well be a hung parliament next year when the election happens, probably in the autumn, but it could go as long as January 2025. So we'll wait and see. But I think that, you know, what is driving this, as I'm sure Liam agrees, is politics. They want to pull back that lead that Labour's got. They know they're behind. They're trying to go back into this idea that they've controlled inflation like Thatcher did in the early 80s, got inflation under control, and here's the growth, here's the tax cuts. But it could all come too late for the Tory party, and the benefit could be Labour if it works.
Just whilst you're there in Downing Street, it's been a busy morning on that famous road, obviously cabinet gathering ahead of the autumn statement. Do you think that, and I believe Cameron's been one of those, you know, sort of grandees that's been walking along there a few minutes ago. Has his arrival into the cabinet shored up some of that apathetic vote? Oh, is there some of them coming out now? All the cameras flashing. That looks like Laura Trott.
Yeah, you're seeing Alex Chalk. Time for tax cuts, Mr. Chalk.
Nice to see you. Hello.
Time for tax cuts, Mr. Jack. Give us a break from this cost of living crisis. That's Alistair Jack there, Scottish Secretary, telling GBNews to be wait and be patient. So calm down in the studio there. And others, you saw Alex Chalk there, Justice Secretary. I think I saw Laura Trott also, who's another cabinet minister. So they're saying be patient, but a big grin there from Alistair Jack, who, of course, the Boris Johnson ally, the Scottish Secretary. Just be patient. Here we go, some more. Michelle Donnellan leaving cabinet now. Time for tax cuts, Ms. Donnellan.
I think we'll stay on you for a bit,
Lord
Christopher,
True there,
because it
who's
seems
Leader of the House of
everybody's
Lords.
doing a bit of a catwalk there. We've got another couple. Go on, swing round, have a look.
Time for tax cuts, Ms. Holden. We give the Tories a break. That's the... sorry for shouting over you, Isabel.
No, not at all.
Please do. That was Richard Holden, who's the party chairman, yeah, and Lucy Fraser, the Culture Secretary.
These are all regulars on our programme.
Here's some more. I'll keep going.
Please do.
Yeah, Chris Heaton-Harris, time for tax cuts for GBNews viewers. Come on, let's do it.
There are quite a lot of
Chris
people.
Heaton-Harris, Northern Secretary there, Gillian Keegan. They're saying, how are you doing?
And that
There's
started
half a hint of something there from Alistair Jack. That's right, the Cabinet, they've seen the detail of the autumn statement behind me. They've signed off the detail now. They're all grinning, which is quite a good sign maybe for viewers of GB News. Maybe we're going to finally get some break from the cost of living crisis. It won't be a lot though. Thresholds are going up. They are pulling in these teachers, nurses, doctors who shouldn't really be paying the higher rate of income tax, as Liam Halligan was saying so eloquently. So I think there should be some good news, I think, coming for viewers in the autumn statement there.
Christopher, thank you very much indeed for your running commentary there. Really appreciate that. We are live right across the country as we cover how these changes will affect you. Let's go to Jack Carson in Birmingham for us.
Steve Barclay there. Good morning. Take it away.
Yeah, good morning to you both. Well, I'm here at Elevate Property Group in Birmingham. They're a property developer with over 30 years' experience in this business, and I'm joined by Mike Diskin, who's the Group Financial Director. I mean, Mike, ahead of this autumn statement today, Jeremy Hunt's going to say that the economy's back on track. I mean, working within this business, do you feel like that's the case?
It's certainly stabilising. It's getting much better. The stabilisation of interest rates and the reduction in inflation certainly helped get some more confidence back in the market. That the housing market is driven by confidence. So that's got to be a good thing, yes.
I mean, obviously, inflation has come down. It was one of Rishi Sunak's kind of big pledges to halve that. Jeremy Hunt's going to try and commit to cutting that even more. I mean, what has been the impact of inflation, across your business? Because you're involved, of course, in the construction side of it, in obviously that property development side of it, and obviously the selling off and leasing as well. I mean, what's been the impact of inflation on your business across the past kind of 12 months?
Well, for the contractors, the guys who actually build the apartments and the houses, it's been a huge impact. Raw material supply, wood, plaster, brick, everything's increased. It becomes very difficult for people to plan and give security for the contractor ultimately.
And so, if Jeremy Hunt does, fulfil this commitment today to cut taxes and cut planning reforms and kind of help, I guess, businesses like yours, do business easier? What kind of impact do you see that having on your business?
Well, it's got to be a good thing. Anything that gives certainty and security is going to be a good thing. Another good thing today would be something for the first-time buyers, get them back in the marketplace. They underpin the buying chain. So with the withdrawal of Help to Buy, if we can get something for first-time buyers on the autumn statement, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, particularly around the kind of work that this group does. How important is it, particularly I guess around big cities like this, that those first-time buyers are helped onto the market? Because I guess for you, does that help your business grow?
Oh, definitely. They underpin the whole chain. Someone has to start the chain somewhere, and so the first-time buyer is usually that person. So it'd be great if they get them back in the marketplace. We have seen them drop off in recent times. That would certainly help us.
Right, Mike, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We'll be joined by you a little bit later on, as well as we lead up to that autumn statement.
Thank you very much indeed, Jack. Let's go to Jeff Moody now at a Christmas market in Exeter. Hello there, Jeff.
Hello to you. Yes, I'm here at the Christmas market in Exeter. It doesn't actually start until 10 o'clock, so at the moment there's a lot of very empty stalls, but it promises to be a really good event with up to 100 stall holders arriving very soon. But I've managed to track one down that has arrived early. Joseph, you're from Nice Ice Cream. What a great name for a company.
Yeah, most definitely. So we're based in Westwood Ho, where we've got our pizza business, Flame and Dough, and it's our third year being a part of the market here in Exeter. So yeah, really excited to be here.
And here today you're selling donuts.
We are indeed, yeah, hot fresh donuts, donut derbies, so real dessert delights.
So what's trade been like over the last couple of years for you?
It's been a struggle, to tell you the honest truth. The biggest struggle for us has probably been from a reduction in the VAT, going down to 5% just after COVID, to now back at 20%. The rising costs of ingredients alongside minimum wage also increasing. So just the increase of costs really is...
So in terms of VAT, that hits your industry particularly hard, doesn't it? Because you have to charge the customer, but you don't get the VAT back because there's no VAT on food and there's no VAT on your staffing, is there?
Most definitely, yeah. So the biggest struggle is obviously, the reclaim of the VAT is obviously very minimal, and obviously what we're paying out for all of the income is obviously the VAT against that. So it's a bit of a struggle, the VAT, most definitely.
So what would you like to see the Chancellor do today? What would you be looking out for?
A reduction in the VAT, I think, would most definitely be nice. I think it's deserved. We work very hard, and I think it's fair. So yeah, I'd like to see a reduction, somewhere in line with where it was before. Would be nice.
We're hearing that there may well be a reduction in national insurance.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of seasonal staff, I take it, that would make a difference too?
Yeah, we do. So over the peak of our summer months, from April till September, we employ in the region of 6 to 8 staff across the 2 businesses we have in Westwood Ho, which are generally sort of uni students. So that would most definitely help, because obviously if it is lower, it's going to make our costs less. So most definitely.
But then we're hearing the national minimum wage might rise, so you'll have to pay out more to those members of staff.
Yep, no, of course, and we always do pay above the minimum wage to all of our staff as well, to make sure it's fair and treat people correctly and so forth. So yeah, it's another expense, unfortunately.
Okay. Joseph, thank you very much indeed. Get the donuts on, because I want one right now because it's cold. We'll be here all morning, so we'll be talking to as many stall holders as we can. But for now, back to you.
Ho, ho, ho. Good luck to you, Jeff. Thank you very much indeed. And let's go to Gaza right now. We've got pictures coming in. There have been ongoing airstrikes over the city there. There you see the aftermath of that. That smoke rising up into the sky there. It just looks like a dull day, but that is the aftermath of that bombing which has taken place today. So despite talks of the hostage truce deal, the hostilities still continue.
Yeah, that deal being agreed overnight with the Israeli parliament voting in favour of it. And from tomorrow, we're expecting a 4-day ceasefire and the swap of 50 Israeli hostages who've been trapped in Gaza in return for 150 Palestinian prisoners, all women and children. We're keeping a close eye on everything coming out of the Middle East for you.
From 9:30, a close eye on what Andrew and Bev are doing with Britain's Newsroom. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Another busy day for you too.
Another busy day.
Autumn statement.
Yeah, autumn statement. I was just going to say, we are going to keep an eye on that Israeli hostage situation. Maybe people will be released during our show. We will very much bring that to you if they are.
And we're going to be in a pub because they're going to freeze alcohol duty, but the pub governor we're speaking to says it's a gimmick. Well, aren't all autumn statements a gimmick, really?
Will it work is the question, because
exactly.
this is the last roll of the dice.
Yeah, well, we get a budget in April too. We're going to cut some changes to national insurance. We're talking to some former Treasury ministers, and also we're going to talk about the jungle, but not Nigel.
Not Nigel, despite his bottom appearing.
The hideous Nella Rose, who on episode 1 we all thought was quite likeable and quite jolly, showed a really awful side of her personality last night by accusing Fred Sirax of saying something deliberate, which was just an accident. And he'd said, I'm old enough to be your dad, in a sort of throwaway comment while he was cooking. And then she was, we will explain what happened on the show, but it was just terrible. I think she'll be out week 1 now.
Oh, what a tease. I'm desperate to know.
Yeah, it was really bad.
We'll have to tune in.
And COVID inquiry, we've got Molly Kingsley coming on to talk about what was said yesterday and why they're asking all the wrong questions.
And JVT in today.
Yes.
All right, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hit a short break there. The UK state visit for the South Korean president continues today. We'll be speaking to our royal correspondent. He's there. He's at the scene. Next.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified on playing strip poker with Israel.
Oh!
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camila Tomini Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Briefly bringing you up to date on the Royal State visit, the UK-Korean business forum that is going on. Cameron Walker been across that for us yesterday, and the result is the Princess of Wales over every front page this morning.
Yes, she certainly seems to have stolen the show with her striking red cape and coat dress by Catherine Walker and hat by Jane Taylor. I think it's just the photographs that went completely viral online
Why
yesterday.
we're showing her? We're showing her because she's flashing her leg, and we don't seem to have the pictures, but this is a front. Let's see the picture of the front page of the paper, please.
Yes, I mean, to be fair, she's still very elegant getting out of the car, if we can see it. There we go. Yes, they're on front page of
But that's the one that really has attracted the newspapers.
Well, that and them sort of canoodling almost. The camera caught them having a little private moment, and it's gone bonkers online.
Yes, so inside the palace, when they were looking at different artefacts in the royal collection to do with South Korea, there was little moments between Prince William and Princess Catherine looking really loved up, actually, touching each other when they thought they were off camera. And I think it just shows the strength of their relationship, actually, and it was really, really lovely. And then, of course, you had the big state banquet last night where the King spoke about the pop culture, including Blackpink, which is a South Korean pop band. They're very young girls, and they were actually at the banquet yesterday and were totally taken by surprise when the King mentioned them by name, so they were very happy about that. The flowers as well, which have been cut from the royal residences, are all being donated, I'm told, to hospices and shelters today, so they're getting a new lease of life.
And what about what the Princess of Wales was wearing at the state banquet? Because I believe it's a tiara that hasn't had an outing for decades, and I must say her cape was really pretty as well.
Yeah, the Queen Mother's Strathmore Rose tiara, last worn in the 1920s by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. I don't know if we've got a side-by-side comparison, but it just shows the jewellery in the royal collection is timeless and can be worn over and over again. Of course, very precious to the royal family. She also wore a white Jenny Packham gown.
Oh, I thought it was a Packham, Jenny.
Yeah.
What's on the agenda today, Cameron? Sorry.
On Wednesday, so we've got the business forum. It's the nitty-gritty stuff when it comes down to the trade talks with Kemi Badenoch, the business secretary. There's also going to be another banquet tonight at Mansion House, and His Majesty is expected to deliver another speech.
Fantastic.
And you say, is this English fare, or do we have South Korean fare at these banquets?
English food, do you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you exactly what's on the menu, actually. So it was British food. So warm tartlets of soft poached egg and spinach puree for starters. Then we had a breast of Windsor pheasant with croquet of celeriac and Calvados sauce and salad. Sounds very lovely. And mango ice cream for dessert.
Oh, very nice. Though I do fancy a Korean and an Asian food. I'm a big fan of that myself. Couldn't lose out. Cameron Walker, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for watching and listening. Back again tomorrow.
Good morning. We're going to be bringing you the latest about the kidnap situation in Israel with the Israelis. We're hoping we're going to have several dozen released this morning.
Of course. And also the autumn statement, just a few hours away, cutting national insurance. We think freeze on alcohol duty, but we're going to talk to some publicans who say it's just a gimmick. Aren't they all?
And that awful story of the teenage boys who went camping and did not come home. Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with Israel.
Ah!
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Akua, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camila Tomini Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel.